I'm awake. Are you?
I wonder how many miles I've fallen. It seems I'll get to the center of the earth. Curious, isn't it? And really, nothing's quite impossible.
Let's go now to our new episode of the Unfiltered Rise with me, Heidi Love.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Rise with me, Heidi Love. And today I have back with me not only a guest, but a friend, JJ Vance from Operation GCD. And we're going to talk some Mormons today. How you doing, JJ?
Heidi, greetings, ma'am. I appreciate the invite. Always enjoy the conversation and discourse here, especially on the Mormons and the occult history of America, which is going to get an interesting conversation today. So, no, I appreciate it, the time, and appreciate the convo and invite. JJ Vance, host of Operation GCD, and not the vice president. Somewhere on the screen there, maybe. Whoop, over here.
Yep, there it is. There it is. I see it. I can't. Every time you say it, I laugh. It's just funny to me. And I'm glad you're not the vice president, because right now that's a shit show. So we'll just.
But I love every time he's in the
alone.
news, though. It's great. All the memes that go around, they're fantastic.
Oh my gosh. Oh, they're so bad. And I just think, oh my gosh. And when I went on the confessionals, a lot of this stuff came out where they made these clips and they were like royal bloodline heritage, and that I think they were saying that I believed I was royal because of Joseph Smith. That's not what I was saying.
I get that a lot too. I get that a lot too, and I think relative to my distant cousin there, the actual vice president, when we're talking about these hidden occult nature, bloodline aspects, this idea of royalty from the old world coming into the new world kind of concepts, I think that can be looked at, through the Society of Cincinnati lens specifically as well, that may be why JD Vance is the vice president.
Absolutely. And if I look at mine,
hidden heritage, especially.
If you're related to one, they weren't a kidding. You're related to every single one. I'm related to almost all. Yeah, the presidents on my dad's side for that one. So.
And all the presidents, that's correct. And all the U.S. presidents are related, except with the exception of Martin Van Buren, who was Aaron Burr's underling in the Tammany Hall situation. That's a wildly different story altogether, as far as politically and American history wise. And that's kind of the rift of the Society of Cincinnati. It erupted out of that Tammany Hall scene that Aaron Burr created. It would go on to be this major kind of anti-liberty, anti-American faction of politics for many years. But that does go back to the society. But Martin Van Buren comes from there, Aaron Burr's underling, and he's not a cousin, but his wife is. So it's all one family.
Yep. Wife's is where I come from. But I have this weird thing that I never really knew about because we were talking beforehand. And I said, okay, I am literally related to the King of England. I don't mean that Joseph Smith is a king or that I am related to the King of Beaver Island, but I don't mean him either. And I mean,
where's Beaver Island?
Right.
Sounds Canadian.
It's in I think it was Wisconsin. It's in Wisconsin. So you haven't heard that story about the Strangs of Beaver Island?
Oh, I know the Strangs. That was Beaver Island. Okay.
Beaver Island, the King of Beaver Island with he had a what is it? Glittery crown that somebody made him. So it's pretty funny, but I do think that, it's all interesting. And Joseph Smith did literally believe himself to be royalty. Let me clarify, just because I'm not related to him per se, I am through marriage, but,
I would argue that's what got him murdered.
Yeah. Yep. He was talking about this. Yeah.
There's an element of the Society of Cincinnati. It's like, look, guys, we're not going to turn this place into a theological, Mormon post-apocalyptic nightmare of a country. Liberty is liberty, but there are some extents. Because that's what Joseph Smith wanted to do. He was going to make everybody Mormon, right?
Well, and they all were intermarrying to save this divine right to rule, right? And this was so strange. They were saying that they were literally related in some fashion or form. And this goes through today to the Kingston clan, which is why they are named the King's son, right? Kingston. And they are still a clan in Utah that intermarry and interbreed with their very close relatives to make sure they keep this bloodline pure. So I wasn't full of it.
And I don't think that's exclusive to the fundamentalist Mormons or the Mormons exclusively, because what you're describing to me is how I relate a lot of these things that we go on in America relative to the Society of Cincinnati, the group that founded America, and still, in my opinion, run America through their hereditary bloodlines that they pass down membership to. And all the U.S. presidents are a member of this group. So a lot of folks say, like, oh, well, this president was a Freemason and this, that, and this. Well, that's great, but not all presidents were Freemasons, and every U.S. president is a member of this secret society that started America. So let's focus on that at first. So And within that organization, all of these families intermarry, but they're all of these old European bloodlines and royal families. For example, George Washington descends from 10 of the Knights Templar that signed the Magna Carta, which was the Bill of Rights before the Bill of Rights, if you will. And, that was a land and liberty dispute with the crown, with the king, and who those 10 knights were also cousins with King John of Lackland, who the guy they essentially helped kidnapped and allegedly murdered after he signed the contract back to them because he gave their land to the Vatican while they were away at the Crusades. So this is just an ongoing land dispute and liberty dispute, I think, within the same families, right? Because how do you have 10 dudes, the Knights Templar, that are cousins with King John, their grandson, 14th and through 17th grandson between these 10 knights is George Washington, and he's having the same disputes with the same descendants of King John, right? That are in charge of the English crown still, right? So I don't 564 years apart. How do you have the same dispute with the same families nearly 600 years apart? And there's not more to the story.
And there's secrets, right? This is kind of what I was alluding to with everything, even though it is interesting that Joseph Smith kind of claimed, he pulled the whole Da Vinci Code and said that, Mary Magdalene and they had kids and he, Martha.
That's
was
the tale of the Templars.
Yeah. So he claimed this. He did. And it's not Heidi making this up. I know how it sounds. Like I already know, and when I started going down my family tree, which I just sent JJ because I wanted to show him the verification, just because it is a wild tale that, I go straight into this missing guy from, John Stuart Talbot down to Henry Talbot. And he is my direct relative. And he's I know about that guy. Yeah.
Yeah. If I may, Heidi, that is a very, I'm glad we're talking about that mystery, because after you told me about that, I went deep into looking into those tales, and it fits right in line with hiding these royal heritages amongst various folks here in America, where I condemn, as a comparison to your story, there's numerous instances where that's occurred, but with Joseph Smith particularly for a moment, his idea that they're part of this dynasty of bloodlines, the Da Vinci Code bloodline, right?
The Da Vinci Code, they really believe it.
Well, that's the belief system of the Society of Cincinnati, because that's the belief system of the Templars, and the Society's a modern day knighthood, literally. And the way I describe it is the best context to understand it is the current incarnation or iteration of the Knights Templar. So this is the belief system of those group, which Joseph Smith comes from, right? His grandfather,
I believe.
Well, there is disputes, over these matters. I actually have the files on deck here today. We want to go over some of those disputes.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, because we're going to get into it too. Yeah.
There's a lot of disputes over Smith's heritage, isn't there? So I think there's a dispute over who his grandfather is and whether or not he has membership in the society, right?
Well, they try to hide who his
They do.
Not his grandfather, but I think his great grandfather, right? Samuel Smith. Where it starts getting a little weird. Yeah,
they try to hide that too. So I pulled up the Daughters of American Revolution and the Sons of American Revolution records, and they claim Samuel Smith was a captain in the Revolution.
Yes, I have that. Yes, I have.
Yeah, but there's no other record of that anywhere else outside of their records, which they do approve. They say this is correct.
Except for if you go up Uncle Jesse's line. If you go up Uncle Jesse's line, you hit pay dirt. I had to go another way around it, and I couldn't figure out what can I do to figure this out and go to this area where he's a selectman of Topsfield. He's the ringleader of the Boston Tea Party. He was in the war. He's this big deal. He's in the Salem witch trials. P.S. He had 2 ladies prosecuted and killed. And so that's where I think they're trying to get away from that, because why else would something so patriotic be hidden when Mormons are extremely patriotic? They just are.
Right. So. Well, not only that, they've obfuscated not only his great grandfather's records and stuff, who appears to have been a member of the Society of Cincinnati. They also obfuscated his son, Joseph's grandfather, that man's son,
Oziel.
Is it Oziel? That's
like Azazel. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, I've seen the H and spelled with the H. He spelled it without the H.
No H. Yeah. Asael.
But that's part of the obfuscation. So they try to say he wasn't the captain. There's an argument to be made he wasn't the captain from the Massachusetts chapter of the Society of Cincinnati, Azazel. Smith, or Azael Smith. Again,
Right.
but they try to say he's a private there's this other guy who's a private in this one company out of New Hampshire, which it's possible, but that one's a whole different person. That's a Shachel Reed Smith. So they've tried to conflate
Yes.
these two individuals, right? I would argue he's the Massachusetts guy, but
Yeah.
according to the Sons and Daughters of the American Revolution, they claim that Captain Samuel Smith is a member of the Massachusetts chapter, and we'll get into those rules, and I think that might actually be accurate. I think that might actually be
And
accurate.
he was, I believe, an attorney. I think if I remember correctly, he was Esquire, Samuel Smith Esquire.
Yeah.
So these are not what they make them out to be. And here's to your point, the Macs are from that area as well. So why would they
Right.
all be so closely living together? And that makes more sense. Like, oh, this is how the mom met the dad, and da da da. Like, it
Right.
makes more sense. You know, it also makes more sense when we're talking about how the boys end up at Dartmouth together. We'll talk about that soon. But all these cousins that continue throughout the ages, why the hell would some guy from New Hampshire fit into this? It doesn't. It doesn't work, you know.
I totally agree with you. And there's a lot to be said about these things, because not only within these specific families, also within these other society families, there's a lot of other disputes of these natures. For example, when you pointed out to me that Jack Black Bouvier was a member of the Society of Cincinnati, I was like, shit, okay, it must be the French chapter. So then I went in, Jacqueline Kennedy's father. So I went into the French chapter. There is a Admiral Bouvier. He does, and when I go back and what the Mormons claim is his heritage and Jacqueline Kennedy Bouvier's heritage there, or Bouvier Kennedy, Onassis, I'm sorry. They do. The Mormons claim that that her third great grandfather, I think his name's Charles Bouvier. They claim his name was Charles Bouvier. That's the same name as this admiral, right? But they claim they're not the same person.
Oh, right. Well, and I've even
and there's
found
no records. There's no records that the Mormons have to dictate this. So I suspect that is the descendant, that is the ancestor of Jackie and Jack Black. So Jack Black Bouvier, or John Bouvier, whatever his nickname was, Black Jack.
Yes, Black Jack. Mm-hmm.
So his heritage came from the one that you pointed me into initially, came from the Maryland chapter, and that we can get into how these rules go and how the membership gets passed down, because that's a unique instance. But as a result of that, I think he may have been a dual member of the French and Maryland chapters, which puts JFK Jr.'s death and life and death into an entire different perspective, especially when he launched a magazine named George.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And also he was kind of chatting about some things that I think got him in trouble. And to your point, there's two Samuel Smiths. Yes, Captain Samuel Smith had Samuel Smith II. And then Samuel Smith II had Azael. So this is why it gets even more confusing, because they passed down these names. And I found this I had to go through Uncle Jesse, because I was hitting dead ends constantly. Sure. So I'm like, I'm going to go through this uncle that they talk about that was this crazy cult leader. What the hell's happening over here? Right. Like,
that's definitely an important detail, but I'm glad you mentioned that the JFK thing is a weird death relative to this, as you mentioned, the political stuff is aspirations. Yes. So what I've asserted is, and they're not obviously not very public about this. But I feel responsible for dictating much of the Society of Cincinnati's existence on the Wikipedias now. If you go to a lot of people's pages, individual people's pages, it'll say this person's a member, or this person was an original member. They've completely revamped their entire Society of Cincinnati Wikipedia page over the years. Oh. Mind you, I've got emails from numerous members over the years talking about these things, so I know they listen. So I'm just saying I like to feel responsible for some of these changes that are now being more open about who is and who's not members, right? And how these things work. But to the point of these political aspirations, I assert that, and that this is one of the details they hide, I think, is the hereditary members who then become president are then murdered.
Yes. Yep. Because, then it continues the ritual, right? It's a ritual.
Well, there seems to be I'm sure there is a ritual aspect to it with all these things they do, but there seems to be a contingent of the Society of Cincinnati members that do not want a hereditary member of the society to become then the U.S. president, because you become a member of the society as a result of being U.S. president, and it seems to be that they don't want an already existing member to hold that position, whatever that does for them, whatever that power internally that gives them. There's a group of them don't
something
like.
About double owning or something.
We have William Henry Harrison, right?
Mm-hmm.
He died 31 days in office.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
I would
fast.
argue he was a hereditary member. I'm sorry, I would argue, yeah, he was a hereditary member or an OG member through his actual military membership, right? Or
Oh,
service.
okay.
He was a
Okay.
military officer. So then you get Abraham Lincoln. I would argue he was a hereditary member because his grandfather, Abraham Lincoln, was an OG member of the Virginia chapter.
Mm. There's
Yeah.
something to these bloodlines. They're very interesting,
Well,
and it plays into such a huge piece of all the college, like just so much stuff. Like and it's weird. It is very odd. Like
it's weird, all
politics,
right.
yeah,
It,
college, like
if you consider Smith and JFK Jr. in those two circumstances, Joseph Smith,
mhm,
his grandfather being an OG member of the Society of Cincinnati, again, he's already dispatched diplomats around the world in 1844, telling them he's going to be the next U.S. president. So, again, that puts him right into that same boat, and he was friends with Lincoln, by the way. I'm not sure if you're
oh
aware of that.
no.
Oh yeah, Lincoln's law partner. I put him in this. I put him in the same room on the same day once, but I can demonstrate that. But Lincoln's law partner represented Smith in three different cases.
Oh wow.
And they were,
That's
Smith was the most powerful man in Illinois at the time.
wow.
He
Hmm.
had the biggest
I didn't
army.
know. Yeah, well, for sure. Yeah, he's making everybody, you
So,
get in, you're part of it. Yeah.
so if you consider JFK Jr. Being at least a hereditary member of the Maryland chapter, because Blackjack Bouvier had no male offspring, and
Right.
he was the only male grandson. So by virtue
Hmm.
of that, it's easy for me to determine he was the member.
It
So
goes to him.
you
Okay.
have that same circumstance. If he suddenly has these political aspirations, he's launched this George magazine, right? Presumably
Hmm.
in honor of George Washington, as it seemed, even though, or possibly not in honor of George Washington. He might be part of that anti-liberty faction I claim as part of the society, but nonetheless, um, he's a guy who's a hereditary member and he wants to be president. Well, they got a way of dealing with these people, Heidi. There's a way of
Yeah,
dealing with
I
dissenters.
I agree. And I think they continue to raise them up and take them down. It's so wild. Like, and Joseph Kennedy, I mean, if we want to talk about the sins of the father there, let alone when we get into Joseph Smith and these people that supposedly aren't supposed to know each other, right? But we're going to prove, just like I proved to you, like, okay, they lived by one another. The Max lived by this guy, this Smith from Captain Smith, right? The second one down to
Yep.
Oziel. They live together, they live by each other, and these families continue to migrate together clear until they get to Dartmouth. And then there's a whole story with a bunch of people that everybody wants you to not know about, which is weird. But I don't want to skip over the JFK stuff and quite
I mean,
yet,
all this
unless
makes
you're
sense to
ready.
me because you got some as I've been tracking some of this occult history and genealogy of America, it seems like a lot of things go back to Essex County, Massachusetts, specifically the towns in around Salem, including Salem, and around the time of 1670 through 1700, right?
Absolutely. And there was some people there and I found it really funny. And I found this book called The Lucy Code. Have you ever heard of this book? It's fascinating.
Doesn't sound familiar.
Fascinating. It is such a good read. And it talks about how Lucy Mack Smith's book is this flex on Brigham Young to pay her some money. And I'm
That makes
pretty
sense to me.
sure, yes, because what did she do? She lost everything, right? She lost every way that she could have money to live because she lost her son, her husband, another son, like all these things that happened to her where she's like, yeah, you're not just taking off to Utah and leaving me high and dry, bro. You're not doing that, brother
I
Brigham.
think it's easy to demonstrate that like that's a different version of Mormonism with under Brigham Young than it was under Joseph Smith.
Oh, for sure. And Brigham responds to this book by completely freaking out, thinking he bought the only copy, hiding it in the vault until Mr. Cowdery decided he was going to go revamp it and sell it. And it went wildfire in Great Britain. And it caused a huge rift between him and Brigham, even though it was edited. That's the book we have to this day. Then they tried to say it was child stories, blah, blah, blah. It's not. And in there, she is very specific about like, we're going to talk today about his wound on his leg, like the measurements, all this stuff. However, she can't remember the right name for the doctor that came, even though it's everywhere. You can go look it up. it's everywhere. She calls him Dr. Nathan Stone. That's not his name. His name is her own. How would you forget Dr. Nathan Smith? And we're going to talk about that too, but we have to talk about two people before that, which is how Dartmouth even became funded. And it's very interesting. It's going to bleed into another cult, which is so strange. I did not expect
cults.
that. Yeah, right.
Not to join them, but I like cults.
Right. Well,
I like to leave cults.
Inadvertently, we were in one, right? We didn't join, but we were there.
I enjoyed leaving it though. That was a good time.
Yeah, that's a good time. So have you ever heard of the start of Dartmouth College, how it got the money and all these things? Because I'm going to tell you that first, because it will make a little more sense. So
I know a little bit about it. I am a bootleg Vermonter. It is about 80 miles away from my hometown there in Vermont, in Huntington, Vermont, Campbell's Hump. I kind of put it in the same bucket as I do a lot of these tales out of American histories. It's all bullshit. So you were just commenting on some of the bullshit tales of the Smith family and Mormonism, and I would say that I can demonstrate, as we've discussed in the past, I can demonstrate how folks were using the term Mormons in baptisms for the dead 6 years prior to the actual official start of the Mormon Church, or the Church of Christ at the time. April
that's
4th,
important.
Was it April 7th, something like that? 1830, right?
Yes.
On a mound in Fayette, New York, named after General Lafayette, the head of the French chapter of the Society of Cincinnati. So, while I'm willing to believe some of those details, I'm saying that I can demonstrate there's a longer history, because my ancestor, Elias Buell, dies in Albany, New York. He also, much like you're saying, these folks migrated. He migrated with these same people.
Right. And these wheel locks
from Essex
come into
County,
play. Yes,
Essex County over to Vermont, and then dying in Albany again at the same time. The Smith migrations are going on. He's actually cousins with Joseph Smith. They're third cousins.
Oh, wild.
Right? So he was a major in the Society of Cincinnati. He was the head of the security detail for George Washington in New York City during the war. So this man was in the know. His children would intermarry with Jesse Root, the general of the delegate to the Continental Congress from Connecticut. So the general of the Society of Cincinnati out of Connecticut. That's where Buell was a member of the Connecticut chapter. But he was a man in the know.
Interaction with the wheel locks. Does that name ever come up?
Oh, that name comes up.
Well, we're going to talk about this today.
I know the wheel locks. I know the wheel locks real well.
The Wheelock story is this Eliezer Wheelock, congressional minister, orator, educator, alma mater, Yale, raised money for Dartmouth, and he named it after Lord Dartmouth that gave him this money for Dartmouth, but he gave it through somebody that was very interesting, named Samson, or sometimes he is referred to as Samuel Occom, Samson Occom, and he is a Native American. And he is a member of the Mohican Nation from New London, Connecticut. And he became a Presbyterian cleric. And he studied, and he was going through this initiation school ran by Eliezer Wheelock, this Wheelock guy. So he goes on this mission to Great Britain in 1743, and he stayed there for 4 years. He became a teacher, a preacher, a judge among the classes. He married one of their women there. He officially was ordained a minister. He remained unpaid since he was Native American, but he did raise a ton of money for the Indian Charity School at Dartmouth. And
that's how it started, right?
This is how it happens. Yeah. Yes. And so they get this money together and they decide on the plot of land, and then they have a falling out between him and Wheelock. And so it's critical to know that he leaves. This Samson Occom never sees the Native American school built. He decides, I'm sick of this. He's going to go live with another band of Native Americans in Oneida. And I was like, what? Oneida? Yeah.
I was about to say, which is exactly where Fayette, New York is, right?
Right. And then becomes this huge weird cult later, this weird, Oneida cult later, basically. But the Dartmouth.
Oh, that's where that cult erupts from, is Oneida, New York?
Yeah, Oneida. And so
good out of here. That's obviously where Smith goes.
So I'm 98% sure on this. On where, because you asked New York, it just says Oneida. I got to double check that. So, It says Oneida.
But that's right
I'm
in the mix of
assuming
Fayette,
Oneida.
and right near Fayette is Cincinnati, New York. Again,
So
that's a heavy concentration of the society territory.
I will look up when he talks next about to make sure New York, because it just says Oneida. So I don't want to misquote.
Okay.
But I'm 98%
That
sure.
would make a lot of sense to me, though, you know?
Yes. And then, so both these schools together, including like the teachers and people that actually like were graduated from Dartmouth, helped bring up this Moorish charity school. And it still exists today. It was established in 1754 with these wheelocks. They did finish it through. And like I said, Samson Occom never saw it to like come through, but there's a critical professor there. And this professor is considered the first professor of the Dartmouth Indian School. And his name is Professor John Smith, or they call him Professor Johnny for short. And I'm sure you've heard
Old
of
Johnny
Professor
boy.
Johnny. Yes. So he was the professor of languages, Greek, Latin, Hebrew. He was very good at Hebrew. And he was the professor of Solomon Spalding. Oh, yeah. Daniel Webster as well.
Wait a second. So I'm sorry, Heidi. I must interject.
Solomon Spalding.
He was the professor of the guy that would later be appropriated. His fictional tales of America would later be appropriate. Well, they're not necessarily fictional, but it was a fictional recounting of what is alleged to be American history, which would later be appropriated as the Book of Mormon, or as a large portion of the basis of the Book of Mormon.
Could be, right? I
can draw some pretty close circles down there in the Pittsburgh area.
We know that there was the Solomon Spalding manuscript. We know that for a fact. So
we know somebody who knew Solomon Spalding. He was an early leader in the church who met him up in Kirtland, right? The guy, why do I always mix this name up? It's not Oliver Cowdery. It's not Pratt. It's the Millerite, the Campbellite Millerite ministry.
Oh, I have that written down here. Let's see.
Why do I always forget this dude's name? I always.
I'm gonna
I have a real Bill Paxton, Bill Pullman conundrum with this guy.
I'll find it because I know I just read that a second ago, so it's gonna come up.
When they ran out of Batavia, New York, and they went to Kirtland, this is the guy that they didn't have much of a congregation.
Sidney
Rigdon. Thank goodness. Thank you.
Yes.
I can never remember that dude's name.
And he's dark.
I could write it on my forehead, and I would look in a mirror and be like, nope, I don't know what that says.
And for Sidney Rigdon, before we open this can of worms, there is a postulation that he continued on as the prophet also, and it is a dark witchcraft faction. And I will let you continue.
I agree. Yes. No, I agree with you because so Sidney Rigdon's background comes. This is when I say the Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormonism are so much closer related than most folks realize because they come from the same place.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Sidney Rigdon was of the Millerite Campbellite line of ministries there, this end of the world apocalyptic nonsense that would later the same movement would later produce the Seventh-day Adventists, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and the litany of these other post-apocalyptic nonsensical ancient alien cargo cult ideas. Much like the Mormons that still perpetrate today, but it was Rigdon. Rigdon was heavily. They already had a little bit of that going on, it seems. But it seems like once Rigdon joined in Kirtland, it went hardcore in that direction.
Yes,
within the Smith,
and he was supposed to be the prophet. He was. He had a bad day, and supposedly this is why I still hold firm that I think possibly they taught them how to channel. Because I'm into the woo-woo, and I think possibly Joseph had his own experience. But I think he mixed it in with other things because he had a whole book to write, and you can't just write about one thing. So
we're trying to decipher their lies through their lies. You know what I mean?
Well, and they're in a cave doing rituals. Like, come on now, let's be real. Let's be realistic. This isn't normal. Okay. And people don't know all that, but that's true. And we've got all these players on board, and they're not even all the way out yet. But remember, they're supposed to be uneducated, poor farm people. And this guy, Professor Johnny Smith, is this high up, like complete language professor. He also is the owner of the local bookstore, and he's supposedly got a copy of the Scotta-Chronicon. And it's really important to know that because it is not Joseph Smith that started the Church of Christ. It is this guy, Professor Johnny Smith, started the Church of Christ. And
I'm into it. What's the Scottish Chronicon?
The Scotta-Chronicon is an ancient book of the ancient sun worship of the Druids. So This is very important with this whole theology. And he's considered, the first professor of Dartmouth. He's got tons of theology behind him. And he actually becomes the associate pastor of Christ and the sole pastor of Christ by 1804. This is long before Joseph is starting.
This is blowing up my brain hole. Again, I can already demonstrate how the 1830 timeline's nonsense.
Yes.
And you mean to tell me this dude knows Simon Spalding?
This guy taught Spalding, and he is.
So where did Spalding get his ideas from? Johnny Smith?
Johnny Smith makes them all go to the Church of Christ as part of their curriculum to be trained as priests. And somebody else is there learning under Johnny Smith. And guess who it is? That would be Hyrum. Hyrum Smith went to Dartmouth and to the Indian College. But just so people know, he didn't just go there. They lived there. Their family, Hyram's cousin is Dr. Nathan Smith of Dartmouth. Put that in your back pocket. And Dr. Johnny Smith, this guy I'm telling you about. Okay.
I gotta stop. I'm sorry, Polly. I gotta.
You're
interject.
okay.
This
is
blowing up my brain hole.
This blew me away.
Well, because I know I can demonstrate how Simon Spalding and Sidney Rigdon, despite me not remembering Sidney Rigdon's name ever, I can demonstrate how they knew each other.
Well, he was his professor at Dartmouth Native American College. And
so this gives a greater backstory to this whole Simon Spalding narrative. So, and especially
the Mac boy is there too. And
I just assumed Smith stole that story in Kirtland. What you're describing to me is this is decades earlier. Originates within the Smith family.
Yes, it is so far before it that it's bananas.
I mean, it makes sense to me because, again, I think their stories are bullshit. I can demonstrate their narrative of history is bullshit, but this is wild to me.
Well, and so I looked it up, right? I thought, okay, if he really did,
I did not know any of this.
If he started the church, they'll have his theology, and guess what? They do. And guess what it looks like? Mormons. And he has all of these speeches, all the theology notes, everything about this Church of Christ under Johnny Smith. If you look up Professor John Smith, who is not only Azael's, so the grandpa's cousin, he's also the cousin on the Mac side. So double related.
Oh.
And what happened was Hyrum, being born of goodly parents, he goes because he was the smartest one, they said. And Joseph was young, and they were awarding this kind of scholarship to these boys at the same time. And not only did they go, the family went. They lived as trustees at the trustee building there.
Interesting, because the family started the university, huh?
Yep. And so,
that's
the Native American part. Yes, the Native American part. That's the place. So
that's interesting. You mentioned Hyrum would be selected for that role because Hyrum is the first counselor, right, to Joseph Smith, right?
Yes. Yep. And so this continues on. And I'm telling you, if you guys look up Professor John Smith Dartmouth and his theology, you'll see hundreds, if not 1,000 papers on this. Okay. There are so many. And I wanted to verify because I thought this is bullshit. Everything that I ever learned pretty good is like, this is bullshit. I'm going to prove this is a lie. And it wasn't a lie. And so I was so confused about it because I never heard this ever. And it is dictated cousin on Lucy's side through Lydia and cousin through Azael on the paternal side. Like they have the genealogy, everything. And I about fell off my chair. So he's extremely exclusive with this library of Dartmouth, and he has access to all of this. But guess what he calls his school of theology? Brace yourself, because you're going to fall off your chair.
Zion.
The school of the prophets. No shit.
Oh.
No shit. This is Professor Johnny's School of the Prophets, where they learn all this, and they are there.
Yeah, where did Johnny Boy learn all this? Because it seems, again, this is what I'm speaking to, these multi-generational.
He was a graduate. I don't know.
But I think a lot of this occultism is passed down to these same bloodlines, right? So that's why we see Marvel Whiteside, aka Jack Parsons, Marvel Whiteside Parsons.
Yep.
We see his fourth great grandmother being accused of witchery in the Salem witch trials, and we see her son, much like, again, Joseph Smith's forefathers, accusing not the Parsons witch, but other witches or alleged witches, right?
Yeah.
She didn't get executed. The other ones he accused got executed. But we see the same relationship. We see Parsons inventing this major occultism in America with bringing in the OTO through the Agape Lodge and I would argue,
Yes.
the overarching Thelemic umbrella, we see the same thing with Joseph Smith, right? In the same aspect of this overarching Mormon umbrella of the fundamentalist Kingstons or the LeBarons or the Romneys or
Yep.
you name it. But we see the same thing. They all go back to Salem and they all go through witches and the witchcraft, and then their descendants are then members of the society, much like Parsons' third great grandfather out of the Massachusetts chapter. Now, see, you can look at the Massachusetts chapter today, they'll have a list of original members, and then they'll have rules and say, well, we may have let some other people in later around 1854. And then they'll say some chapters have different rules than other chapters, and all these are true statements. But it seems that even if he wasn't an original member, that Parsons' third great grandfather, no different than Smith's, would later then qualify at certain date later. But nonetheless, these are the same people that we see: the
They
witchcrafts, the
are.
officers of
Yeah.
the revolution, their descendants doing all this
Yes.
occultism. So I think this occultism is passed down through those lines.
So listen, they had to go to this freaking church 2 times a day for 4 years. This is true. And Hyrum left at 11. His family went with him as trustees. They live on campus as Dartmouth trustees in the same house as the Max, going to school, teaching. I don't know if it's at the same time as, Solomon Spalding, but he is his professor. So, I mean, you got 4 years to play with there. So
Yeah.
these are being trained as priests to teach the Native Americans Christianity. This is not for Native Americans to go to. Okay. This is not that.
Right. Right.
They are teaching these men to be priests over them. So
How does Spalding get there? What's his heritage?
and I don't even know. It just said he was
Is
the
it the
professor.
same heritage that we're describing here? You know what I mean?
I didn't go back into his line yet because this was so big. When I get to this doctor, you're going to be like, what on earth? So, okay, and for people that say it's not the same people, hold on to your pants because there's going to be a link. So not only is one cousin there, this Dr. Johnny Smith, there's another cousin there, and he happens to have showed up to save the day. And even though I always thought it weird, and this is why I went down this rabbit hole, I always thought it weird that these poor farm people had access to this Harvard graduate doctor. And I was like, how the hell did they get this really fancy doctor to come save his leg? And I went and looking. That's what happened here. So I find Dr. Nathan Smith. And Dr.
Yep.
Nathan Smith is not Dr. Nathan Stone. Okay, he's not. He is the founder of Dartmouth Medical School. He is a graduate of Harvard. He is the founder of Yale Medical School after this. And let me tell you what, he is something else when you look through him. So he is also double related through the grandparents on both sides to Joseph Smith. And Hyrum is there during this time. Yes. And so he is this doctor, and he is trying to teach people how to be a doctor. But how the hell do you do that when you don't have any dead bodies? So this may explain why.
I would say you got to start producing the bodies.
Yeah, might explain why the Smiths never
Yep.
found any treasure. And it might explain why they ran an ad saying they were sleeping at their dead son's grave. And this makes so much more sense when you put it in context, because if they were known for that, and guess what they were called? The Resurrectionists. Okay. He hired these people.
We're talking a little bit of necromancy, are we?
I am. And it got weird. And I went, this story's got to be bullshit. Like, this cannot be true because this is insane. But these are
I do love me some necromancy.
Right? These are papers.
Tales of it, not practicing of it.
Yeah, exactly. Papers published by his daughter-in-law, The Life and Death of Dr. Nathan Smith Letters. He's got tons of stuff on him. He's a big deal because he starts this whole thing here at the same time frame, saves Joseph's leg, and
that's a pretty famous incident, though, right? Because that's not a time when not people are really saving legs. You know what I mean? They're lopping off a lot of legs.
Yeah,
they're not really
they
like,
were
hey, we're
cutting
save
everything.
this, bud.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
well, if it's not the bacteria, you're a nurse. It's not the bacteria,
Yes.
the infections, the gangrenes. They're lopping stuff off. They're not saving things back then.
No, and the
so
mom
is this some
was the
magic?
one. Well, that too. And the mom begged. She said, "This is what you need to do." Why would Lucy know? She was a lay midwife, just so people know. His dad was a teacher. His great grandpa was an attorney and a selectman. Look, these were not backwards people. Okay, they weren't uneducated people. I'm not going to
Right,
say
but
they weren't backwards. But they knew
what I'm
some
getting at, were they doing faith healing though, Heidi? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and she knew exactly what to do. Like, did
they're
she
not
get that
backwards people, but they
revealed?
might be doing some folk
Right.
magic, right?
Well, and they definitely, there's lots of accounts of folk
That's what I'm
magic.
getting at. Is this actual surgery, or is this some we talking something else going on here?
That's very interesting to know. And who even knows? But I will tell people this, where they will say, no, his mom said it was Dr. Nathan Stone. Just to prove my point. Just to prove my point. Guess who Dr. Nathan Smith marries? You're going to die. I almost died.
Is it a Mac?
No, but it's damn close. He marries Sally Chase from next door. Sally Chase, who lived next door to Joseph Smith. He actually married her sister Elizabeth first, and she dies. And Sally Chase, the original seer stone lady that had the original seer stone that I have a picture of, it's green. She was the one that showed it to Joseph, who became entranced with it, and then he got his own stone. So she was teaching him things, and he marries the neighbor. It is the same man. It is
typical.
Yes. And so why else would he marry? It can't be that coincidental. Come on. No way.
And again, there's just so much obfuscation here, because like, even if you try to get into the records, the actual records of Nathaniel Smith's parents, right, for example, good luck finding it.
Well, since he was a doctor, guess what I do have? This is documented from Barron's article 1813. For anyone that thinks I'm so full of shit, this is documented in this article. The surgeon notes from Dr. Nathaniel Smith that he saw Joseph Smith 18 times for his infected leg.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. No, there's some great records of that. That's what I'm saying. So it seems to establish this further relationship when they change, when then they obfuscate that story, what we do have records of with Nathaniel Smith, and then you find out that someone has deleted his birth records. They're just,
for sure.
The actual record of it is just gone. So now he just doesn't come from anywhere. But the reason why he doesn't come from anywhere, because they're hiding that story by demonstrating it, by changing it to Dr. Stone. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's the most reasonable explanation for these
Lucy,
circumstances.
So in this book, they're postulating that Lucy Mack Smith changed it to flex on Brigham to get money. And so she would hold her secret if he would pay her off, or else she was going to let it fly. Because this guy, there's a problem.
Right. And that may be an element to it, right?
He gets ran out of town for digging up bodies. And he literally gets in trouble for perjuring himself for digging up bodies. And they chase him out of the town, literal. And
no pun intended, because his wife was a Chase.
Right, exactly. And they kick out Joseph and Hyrum, and he can't finish his education. And this happens when Hyrum's 14. But this
makes sense to me, though. This makes a lot of sense to me, because
finished.
This is a generational. Oh, I'm sorry. Who finished?
Bat Boy? The cousin, the Mac boy.
Mac
finished.
Boy. I was about to say, I missed Bat Boy.
No, but the brother, Hyrum, he had 1 year left. And this is when they flee the town. They flee. And why would they flee? Probably because they were grave diggers, not
the same reason they flee every
treasure
town,
diggers. Well, treasure, graves. I mean,
yeah, but what you're describing to me is a proto aspect of that I was unfamiliar with, really. I mean, the Mormon tales unfamiliar with, really, until you've described these tales to me before, and I'm like, yeah, this all makes sense to me, because that's what happens to the Smith family. They get run out of every town they go to.
Yes. But for this, up until this period of time, they kept in a pretty close radius of 20 miles. They take off after this one, hundreds of miles. And that's when she opens up her cake and beer shop and all that stuff. And that's where they go from there. But this is before that. And this is so important that people understand. Only 1 in 1,500 people got accepted into college in that day. And this was a big deal for Hyrum. This only happened because of his family, membership here. Not only that, but then Nathan Smith takes off and starts Yale, talk about skull and bones direction, his medical school he is the founder of Yale Medical School after he ran away from Dartmouth Medical School, and he graduated from Harvard. So this is all well documented. If you put in Joseph Smith and Dr. Nathan Smith, you will find the story of him saving Joseph's legs.
So,
they're no longer hiding it.
All of this makes sense to me in the aspect that again, Nathan's dad there would be Captain Samuel Smith the first, right?
Yes.
Senior, the first one we went by. So, and I have documents that proves he is a member of the Society of the Cincinnati based upon based upon the rules, the stated rules of the Massachusetts chapter, and based upon the records of the Sons of American Revolution, the accepted record that I found. Right, I was looking for the accepted record of Ezekiel Smith to solve this controversy over the private versus the captain, who is who. Right, I assert that Joseph's grandfather was, the son of Samuel, was the captain and not the private, which would only make sense once his father's a captain, right? And I can prove that. And again, that would be Nathan's father. So when you see them integrating all these things, they're involved in all the occult and the politic aspects of what's transpiring in America at that time. Was what I would argue.
Isn't that wild that there's such a huge connection? I couldn't believe that they were.
Well, it makes sense to me.
Like,
do you remember Joseph Smith's his third great grandfather?
No.
He's the give me a second. I was asking you because I was hoping you knew his name.
Or maybe that is three. Yeah, because there's Captain Samuel Smith, but then
it's not a Smith. It's not a Smith.
Oh, the other side, Max. The Max.
No, it's through the Smith tree. Oh
shoot.
Give me a second. I'll let you know.
Okay.
I wasn't trying to stump you. I was hoping you knew.
No, you're good. No, you're good. And I'm almost done.
I'm terrible with names, Heidi, so I was hoping you knew it. This is going to get weirder because this is also my ancestor, so I can't even remember his name.
Well, it'll pop up. And the funny thing is it's just so wild to me that we see such a complete circle, not only to Joseph, but to the neighbor. Like, come on. It is them. This is the right people.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. We're demonstrating, I think, that they're willing to obfuscate a lot of these other details to the point where it's obvious that when you see these connections, you see the neighbors, you see the same family, the Smiths, you see the relationship with Simon Spalding. That's fucking fascinating.
So wild. And on top of it, that if they're training them to be priests, and I haven't gone through the theology notes yet because there are so many, I dare say they knew quite a bit, because guess what they also were involved with? Aramaic. Like, they knew some weird stuff. They were talking about, Muslims and Eastern religions and all this wild stuff through Dr. Johnny Smith, not the real doctor, not the medical one, the professor. And he is the one that is toted with this Church of Christ. And even the Campbellites are said that, yes, Sidney Rigdon knew about the Campbellites, but that did not happen until years later. And so this is way before that, like with their interaction. It said,
can you repeat the Sidney Rigdon part with chronologically? What are we talking?
So it's a Church of Christ attendee ×2 a day for almost 4 years. Campbellites had the similar name through Rigdon's, but not till years later.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that is the connection there. So there is some similar theologies, what they're saying.
Yep. But that it happened through Smith's line first. Isn't that wild?
It's pretty wild. Well,
I couldn't believe it. And then when they disappeared,
it almost looks like. Well, now it almost looks like the Campbellites are almost an offshoot, right?
Yes, I think so. I think
what you're describing, right? Of what you're describing.
Yep. And then
I like that. I like that a lot, actually.
They take off because of the grave digging trial, which is documented. This is documented. They left the letters about requesting bodies. They left all this weird stuff behind because they were fleeing. Dr. Nathan Smith did. And he was prosecuted for it. So it's all over. You guys can find it. But when that happened, the Scotichronicon, this really rare book, disappears. And it's worth a lot of money. And you don't have this whole college based on this theology and have the book disappear. That's like starting the Book of Mormon church without the Book of Mormon, right? Like, no,
I've never even heard of this book, but it sounds very fascinating relative to their occult theologies, right? Their belief systems.
Crazy, because it disappears along with a few other rare books, and then all of a sudden she has money to buy this cake and beer shop. Oh, fascinating. And I'm
sounds like some necromancy. Sounds like some magical necromancies.
well, and family lines are speaking. Like, I mean, come on, this is deep. I mean, when I found
Well,
all
you're
this
bringing it
stuff
back decades
out,
and focused even
whoo,
more in on the Smith family with these aspects.
yeah, I just couldn't figure out why they were hiding this captain so heavy, because I'm like, this is like a good thing. Like, he's the one that created the idea for the Boston Tea Party. He's this stand-up guy, went through the war, blah, blah, blah. But then I found where he was involved in the Inquisition. And so that made it more, oh, right. There it is.
I feel slightly less tarred at the moment, Heidi. I discovered where my gap was there
Oh,
in his
good.
heritage, and not remember this dude's name and my own forefather for that matter, because this man is the corresponding relations with Joseph Smith, that Major Elias Buell that I said dies in Albany in 1824, who in his last will and testament said, "Don't let those Mormons baptize me for the dead." How he knows that 6 years prior to the official start, I think you just solved that mystery.
Yes, I think
So a
so
lot.
with the Church of Christ. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So Elias Buell is the third cousin of these Smith boys. He'd be the second cousin once removed from Dr. Nathaniel Smith through a fellow by the name of John
Ah.
Lothrop.
Oh, you're kidding. Wow. And what a twisted web we weave.
And if you look at John Lothrop, he's the ancestor to almost every Mormon leader, to I think 9 U.S. presidents, to Ted Bundy. Ted
Oh,
Bundy is a
wow.
descendant of John Lothrop. You name it. A lot of folks in America are descended from John. He's one of those early Plymouth, Massachusetts fellows.
Okay, okay. So that makes sense. And then we've got, all these people that have this big connection, which is what is going to help them along the way, where people kept saying, we don't know how the Smiths always bounce back, but we do now, because they're in not only one secret society, but two, with
Yeah.
with the Masons and this. Plus,
Right.
we've got Selectmen as our forefather. Like, that's going to speak somewhere,
And he's directly descended from folks again like Reverend John Lothrop, who was the founder of Barnstable, Massachusetts. It was one of the early English Anglican ministers of Massachusetts there, and he lived from 1584 to 1653. But he's literally, I'm not kidding you, Heidi. Everybody, you're probably descended from this guy.
Oh, I'm
quite certain you are.
Yeah, I'll have to look that
With your heritage of the Mormon hierarchy.
Yeah, for sure.
Benedict Arnold, descendant of this guy. The Bush boys.
Oh, geez. Well, I am directly related to President Kennedy, so like directly.
Useless S. Grant was both a member of the society. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he's a member of the society. I suspect he wasn't, and that's why he didn't get murked when he became president. But he's of these families, so he's descended from John Lothrop from the same way I'm descended from John Lothrop, and that's through Martha Huntington, and that's Elias Buell's mother.
I'm related to Huntington, the lady that started the Relief Society.
Well, that's part of the same family I'm discussing. You're Diana
yes.
Zenith Huntington Smith? Smith Huntington Smith Young? Didn't she marry both Joseph Smith and Brigham Young?
Yep.
Yeah.
And by the way,
she's a cousin of Elias Buell.
Speaking of magic, her blessings for healing were known to work way better than the men's, and then they outlawed it. Then they outlawed women doing it.
She was basically the female head of the church, right?
Yep, but then they took it away from the women holding the priesthood because she was better than they were.
Well, they credit her with finding the Relief Society today, right? So that was her consolation prize. So that's Elias Buell's second cousin Huntington.
That's one of my relatives for sure. I've looked that one up.
So you can see where I'm convinced that Elias Buell knew what he was talking about, and I don't think somebody wrote that in his last will and testament later. You know what I mean? We
need to find out how. I should have gone down more the rabbit hole of Spalding's family and how they knew that Dartmouth situation. Like, why was he there?
You've already sent me down that rabbit hole.
Unleashed the beast.
This conversation.
Yes. And so, but it was so fascinating. I couldn't believe it. And this guy that wrote this book, you guys, he brought he did the whole deal like I do. He brought like pictures of genealogy, all the whole thing.
And what was that book title again?
The Lucy Code. The Lucy Code. And it's like 2007, I think. It's kind of older, and it was kind of fizzled out because and he talks about John D in it, and I'm like, exactly. And so this is, anytime I go down something where it looks like John D's involved, I'm 100% listening, because I do believe two things. I believe they really did practice magic, And I do believe it has a big part of Mormonism, not just like taking things from other people, but I think that they taught them how to have their own experience as well. And,
Right.
so of course it's going to sound similar.
I,
If these
I,
guys are all
I
doing
think,
like the same
I think you're
thing.
spot on. I think that's what they're passing down through these families, right?
Yeah. Well, if you're going to church twice a day, learning how to say the Hail Mary, you're all going to say it the same. Okay. That's just the facts.
Wait. They're saying Hail Mary?
No. As an example, if you learn something one way,
You just hit on a very exemplar saying.
no.
That's what they were saying.
But if somebody said JJ said a Hail Mary just like Heidi, of course we learned it the same. Like everybody says it the same. So Spalding's manuscript may have been his own, and they just taught him how to do that magic. Possible.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
So,
now the Templars used to sign things AVM, Ave Maria, Hail Mary would essentially be our current interpretation of that saying, of their version of that saying.
No, I did not know that one. But this guy's theology is thousands of pages online, and it talks about the three heavens and the whole deal. It talks about so much stuff that's Mormon day. Like it's unavoidable. It's wild.
I think if you start also combining the signature of the AVM, you'll start seeing the early representation of the compass and the square and some other symbols that they venerate, like the Venus worship, right? If you will.
Which what is Venus? So people that don't know can know. It's not Jesus Christ the Nazarene. I can tell you that.
It's goddess,
quite
right?
opposite. Well, I think Venus can represent Lucifer.
It's certainly possible, I suppose, but isn't it often described as this goddess worship that we're talking about with it that it at least exists today in a very secret sense within Mormonism, but it used to exist during Smith's time in a public format with your ancestor, with your foremother.
Right. Oh, sorry. Wrong one. Sorry.
But I really like how you paint and describe these details, Heidi, because it goes back to the Smiths doing stuff years earlier, which now provides their cousin Elias Buell, cousin of the Huntington. Again, these folks intermarrying with each other. Joseph Smith marries Zina Diantha
in ancient
Huntington.
times. Okay, I'm right. Yes. The Latin name Lucifer is of Latin origin and means light bringer. In ancient times, it was used to refer to Venus when it appeared as the morning star.
That's kind of what I was getting at. It might be possible because, again, I didn't want to get into the whole Lucifer Satan debate with folks. I try to avoid those terms because I think people are often misconstrued with this term of Lucifer today.
There's been many Satans in the world. Right. I mean, it's a title. That's a title. I'm talking Lucifer, the morning star. So
that's right. And well, what I try not to do is try to not conflate with this goddess worship that does go on with the ideas of what we now call Lucifer. You know what I mean?
Yes. And we're talking about the House of Abrak at this period with Lucy. Lucy's the one that brought that up. We're talking about all these things that are very interesting. She is dropping breadcrumbs like a mofo. She is pressing Brigham. Like, if you do not pay me, you mother effer, all my kids are dead. The last one, nobody talks about that poor kid. You know what happened to him, don't you? The last
Don
Smith,
Carlos,
David Smith. He ends up in a freaking mental institution for his whole life almost. She's pregnant.
I thought Don Carlos was the youngest one now.
So no, I'm quite certain. I'll double check my fact, but he ends up in a mental
he dies as a young man too, right?
It was really sad. They say he might have been gay and that he died like this horrible, they kept institutionalizing him.
I don't know about this. What's his name?
David, let me grab this really quick.
Oh, I'm thinking of Joseph's younger brother, Don Carlos.
Oh, yeah. No.
He got murked there in Illinois.
David Hyrum. He's the youngest son of Joseph and Emma, prominent figure in the reorganized church, and he was a missionary, poet, painter, singer, philosopher, naturalist. After his father's death, David was raised by his mother and second husband, but he ends up institutionalized for most of his life, and it is horrible. He experienced mental health challenges, which led to institutionalization and his death at the Northern Illinois Hospital Asylum for the Insane.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, it's really sad.
Yeah, and actually, I was getting Don Carlos, his second youngest son, mixed up with his brother Don Carlos. They need to start naming these folks different names.
Yeah, Heidi. It's there. Well, that's why they do it, because then you never know who the hell you're talking about.
So how do you get a Don Carlos Smith? Where's that name come from?
The Romneys. Oh, I don't know. No, just kidding.
But who does the Smith family meet to name their son? Who does Azazel Smith meet to name his son Don Carlos?
I want to know how Azazel got his name because that's a fallen angel. That's hysterical to me.
This is a name that gets passed down through each generation. It's not just
Oh.
Joseph's uncle or his brother or his son. This is a continued. Why they keep naming these folks Don Carlos?
Exactly. And
Because
they just,
doesn't that mean Mr.
yeah.
Charlie
I mean,
or some derivative of that? I don't speak Spanish. I'm just saying, like, I feel like that's a weird name to have for this blue
it's a
blood
very,
culture.
that's a very strange, it's a very strange name for sure. That's like, and then this last son that she's pregnant with, like you would think this would be a big deal. Nobody talks about him.
Yeah,
Nobody.
yeah. Who institutionalized him?
Yeah, his mom left him there. And then they said it was so bad that his friend, he's his friend, but their letters are published. People can look at his letters to each other. They seem very much in love.
But when did he get
well,
institutionalized though? Because
he got
I don't see the date on that.
institutionalized pretty young. Let me see. He was born 1844, died in 1904, and
So he
he
got
was
married at 26.
institutionalized at, I just barely read it, at that hospital. Let me find it.
I see he dies there.
Da-da-da-da-da.
Oh, he's been there for 27 years. Okay.
It was long. It was sad. And I
So
wonder
he went there
why.
in 1877.
Yeah, and this is from the church's actual.
So
this
he
is
was
from the
33
church
years old.
history.
Holy shit.
Yeah, exactly. Holy shit.
Almost half his life, Heidi.
Yes, and
No
they
one
said
talks about this. I don't think I've ever heard this story before.
No one talks. They say that this is like
It's
that
like this is the Kennedy daughter situation, right?
right.
Rosemary,
They say that
it's like
this
Rosemary
is like
Kennedy.
the one you put your sins on. What's that called?
Right.
Well, I can't remember that name for that right now, but they do that with chickens and stuff. Leading the
It
lamb
just
to the
reminds me so
slaughter.
much of yeah, it reminds me so much of what they did to Rosemary Kennedy,
Yeah, they friggin' lobotomized her. Yeah,
And they put her in an institution up there in Wisconsin on a mound.
because they couldn't even do anything because he went too far too, and she was like
So,
peeing herself. It was
what's
sad.
interesting to me is this is the same time though he's getting institutionalized, right? I mean, it's a little bit late, but there was a real hit squad out for all these Smith boys in Illinois at this
Yes.
time.
Absolutely.
So
And
Don Carlos gets murked in 1841 in Nauvoo at the age of 25. This is Joseph's uncle, Don Carlos, right? So then
yes.
his brother. This is this is his uncle Don Carlos. I swear these people and their names.
They just lie and say mental health issues. That's all they say.
This is his brother. Yeah, this is his brother. I apologize. This is his brother, Don Carlos, that gets murked, right? So he has numerous brothers. Was it Samuel that gets murked also?
Oh, a bunch of them are dying.
Yeah.
As bad as the Kennedys, man. No.
They're all getting murdered in Nauvoo. So Samuel, about
Yeah.
3 months after Joseph and Hyrum get murked in Carthage prison, Samuel gets murked. That's what I'm saying. So there's this whole. It's at the tail end of those activities.
I just found something. Listen to this shit. David struggled with his own beliefs and his relationship with Amasa M. Lyman, a former LDS leader who became interested in spiritualism.
There you go.
Did he
the
get
Lymans
a
go
demon?
back, don't they?
Did he get a demon?
The
Holy
Lymans go
crap.
back though, don't they?
Well, yeah, but that's scary.
Asa Lyman was the first counselor in the 12 apostles of Joseph Smith, right?
Yeah.
Form of the 12.
Yeah. Yes. And that is crazy. Like,
Is that
I
what they
didn't
call it,
know
first
that
counselor? What's the head of that? What's the head of that
first and
organization?
second counselor. Yeah. And then
the head of the Asa Lyman was the first
president.
Was that
of
what
the
he
Quorum
was?
of the 12. That's
Okay.
usually what they call them.
Is that what it's called? I'm sorry, Amasa Lyman. We're talking about the same guy, right?
Amasa. Lyman.
Or is this his son?
They said, okay, let me read that again. That was wild. The spiritualism part, I'm like, what?
Well,
Okay.
it's the name that intrigued me because they're very tight with the Smiths, and I grew up with
yeah,
one of my closest friends
A-M,
in the church was a descendant of this man.
Amasa, Amasam Lyman, and I think he was the
But
one
is it
that
is
was
it the
his
original or is
boyfriend.
it his son?
Let me look him up. Let's see. Born March 30th, 1813. Died February.
No, I see it. What? No, it was him. Holy shit, he got excommunicated. Holy shit, I didn't realize this.
I think they were gay. Like they were in love.
Holy
I think
shit.
this is the guy. I'm not 100, but there was a guy he was writing. I think this is the guy.
That's this guy. That's him.
Yeah.
I grew up. One of my closest friends in the church, Heidi, was a paternal descendant of this man.
Yep. Violation of Christian law of chastity.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't
So,
realize he was doing homo stuff with Joseph Smith's son.
yep. And they were in love. Like it wasn't just like he cared for him. He was the only one that went back and got him out on weekends and stuff and took care of him and like
What in the world?
try. Yeah, this gets weird. No wonder
I'm
they
familiar with the
obfuscate
Lyman.
this one.
Again, I'm
Yeah.
familiar with the Lyman family. Actually, like I said earlier, I'm familiar with the Wheelock family. I'm familiar with the Lyman family.
Did I, at least I could blow your mind today because
A couple times.
this one blew my like when
You
I had
you've
no one
you've
to
painted an
talk
entire
to.
structure from
When I had
Elias
no one to
Buell's
talk to about that, yeah, like it was like killing me.
1824 thing. You were saying don't let the Mormons baptize me again. He's so closely related to all these Mormons, literally related and politically connected. I
Yes.
was convinced he knew what he was talking about, right? And that wasn't written later. And you provided the entire structure of how that happens.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that wild?
It
That
makes a
just
lot of sense
seems
to me. Because I
I'm
think a
gonna
lot of
have
this stuff
to
was built on folklore within these families, this folk magic stuff within these families.
yeah. No, it did. And definitely like I mean the notable descendants of both are way big, you know. And Brigham himself has a lot of really even his name is very occultic. Like Brigham's stuff is a whole nother deal. Like, yeah, him and his bloodstone.
Um,
But
that Elias Buell guy also kens with Brigham Young. So again,
really,
I'm telling
oh,
you, all of these, especially that whole network of
huh,
folks, they all interrelated. They're all
that's
interrelated.
wild. Well, this
That's why we
one
that's
they
why we look at
hide.
Pope. Well, that's why we look at folks like John Lothrop here, that guy that I was talking about, my ancestor and Smiths. We look at him, and we can see all these Mormon leaders, right, that are descended from him, right?
Yes. Yep. And I mean, they just keep going and go. It's so interesting. Like it is just, yeah, it's very odd. That's for sure. Yeah.
Like we got Joseph Smith, Hyrum Smith, Wolford Woodruff, Oliver Cowdery, Parley P. Pratt, Orson Pratt. Then we go to the folks even descended from those guys that are still prominent today. We got the Romney boys, Mittens and his father. We got John Huntsman Jr. They invented
Yes.
styrofoam. His father invented the styrofoam containers that everything McDonald's was sold in for years. They're worth billions of dollars, and he was the ambassador to China for Obama.
Do
So
you
these
like
people
that
that are
guy's
descended,
middle name too? It's Mason. His name is.
right? And so these people are so very prominent today. They're descended from Lothrop. So it's these are very much the people that have started and run this country still today.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just wild to me how much
I'm not
they
one of those people, and I don't think
hide.
you are either. Even though we fall in that category, right? Of descending
No.
from John Lothrop, we're not running anything. I'd rather run a
No,
podcast.
I don't want to run. I don't
But,
want to run it.
but
Like they can have that.
Well, I
Look
make
at the
that point to make this. I think there's a distinction within these generational families and whatnot. Of they got a way of dealing with dissenters, and they identify them very young. That's at least how I feel like in my past. That there was an early indicator I had a real problem with authorities, and this guy was not going to be playing ball with anybody. That's what folks
definitely
decided.
no, definitely not. And then on top of it, if you didn't do what they wanted you to do, like you said, they have a way of dealing with dissenters. If they didn't kill you, they put you in a mental institution for your whole life, and nobody
There you
knows
go.
your name. Nobody knows this guy existed. Like you
No,
tell 100 Mormons, what about the baby that Emma was pregnant with upon Joseph's death?
Heidi, I didn't know that he even existed, and I didn't know he had a homosexual love affair with the first counselor of the first presidency of the 12 Apostles of Joseph Smith.
Exactly. And so
That's a big deal.
allegedly,
Well,
but there's
he got
letters,
excommunicated for it.
there's letters, and there's letters, and they were
I had no idea he was excommunicated
yeah,
in the first place. I didn't go that deep in the man's history, but
right.
I went just the early onset of the church. I didn't see where he ended up there, and I didn't realize that it was ever something like that either.
Yeah, it was something. And I'll tell you, like they talk about, how much they cared for one another, how much, all this stuff, like that he would go and get him out. He tried to have David Smith come live with him for a while, and he had to reinstitutionalize him.
Well,
I don't
I don't
know
doubt any of those
why.
things actually, because this all
Yeah.
makes sense to me in the context of these people were in a sex cult.
Yep. Yeah,
These ideas of
probably.
sexuality were not something that they adhered to. This was more of a much more fluid situation. So, what most folks don't understand about the dynamic of, and I'm sure you do, I think we've discussed this already, was that not only was this polygamy more of an upper echelon thing with like,
Mm-hmm.
Zina Diantha Huntington, Smith, Huntington Smith Young there, who your ancestor, who was the start of the Women's Relief Society within the church and whatnot. And she's married to all these different people. Like, they claim that she didn't have any kids with Smith. That's fine. They claimed Smith had no kids out of wedlock, which is preposterous. But these matters were only of the upper echelon of the church. And then that homeboy Smith number 2, the general of the Nauvoo militia, got caught sleeping with some dude's wife who got, they couldn't come up with another excuse how that dude was crazy or something. So then it got brought to the surface. And then,
Send him to the
once it
mission.
got brought to the surface, Smith was like, I got to let you go, buddy. Everyone knows about it now. We got to let you go. So he was the fall guy, right? He starts the first Mormon offshoot. I can't think of his name either, but, it's I think it's important to understand that these were more of a sex cult environment. Not so much a polygamy, it was polygamous, but it wasn't just focused on polygamy. It was focused on sex cult.
Polyamory.
I would argue,
yes.
I would argue, was focused on sex magic.
Yes, well, absolutely. Because if you get into what this really is, like you've already brought up the Templars, like what I want to dive into next is the Scotochronicon to find out exactly what they're teaching about sex in that. Right? Like that's what we need to know.
I strongly suspect that it's very similar to the theology that Beverly, what's his name? Beverly Randolph.
Oh, okay.
Pascal Beverly Randolph brings in, I think, in around 1858, he starts a Rosicrucian order in America, which he's the guy that introduces sex magic long before Crowley. So I think he gets it from these people, right?
Well,
whatever the epicenter of that is with Joseph Smith, because you see all this ancient alien cargo cult stuff with they have the same Sirius star system belief system, right? With Joseph Smith and this Pascal Beverly Randolph, he's of the blue blood Virginia family of Randolphs. Like I'm a distant cousin to his. Thomas Jefferson would be in that mix. A lot of Randolph people, just like the Talbot, just like your Talbots have a lot of people, but just like the other fellow, Lothrop fellow I was talking about. So I think the epicenter of that activity is sex magic stuff with these people.
Just to give people an example, like in 1928, and I get that's much later, but clear back then, we've got like the Fraternus Saturni, which is real fucking weird. Let me tell you, if you want to read that book, that's something else. And so if you look into these older things, they got them from somewhere, like you're saying, like this goes older and older and older and older.
Yeah, so, Pascal Beverly Randolph didn't invent that stuff in 1858. He got that from somewhere else.
No, of course not. There's nothing new.
People don't understand that, though. You know what I mean? A lot of people they move past that. They're like, well, he found it. Wikipedia says he founded it here, and that's where he got it from. I'm like, come on, man. This stuff's getting passed down through these families.
So this is what it says about the Scotochronicon. It's a 15th century chronicle by the Scottish historian Walter Bower. It's a continuation historian from priest John of Fordun, Fordun's earlier work, Chronica Gentis Scrocordica. These are so hard to read, but
you're doing better than I could.
Beginning with the founding of Ireland. So that's how old we're talking. I mean, this is old, so, and the founders of Scotland of medieval legends, Scota and Godiel Glass, voyaging from Egypt as depicted in the 15th century manuscript Scotochronicon. And so this consists of 16 books written in Latin. The composition started in 1440 and was completed by 1447. So we're talking old. I mean,
I'm hearing a lot of Templar belief systems in what you're describing there, Heidi.
Absolutely. Well, they said it was a druidic. They said it was druidic.
Yeah.
And so,
well, that's what the Templars are. So the Templars composed of the quote unquote royal families of the civilizations in which Rome destroyed, of which would be included the Druids.
Absolutely. And it makes you just look at it with new eyes and say, okay, well, if they had access to things like this, even if it's not this particular book, remember, Professor Johnny had a bookstore. They had access to lots of books that they didn't have to own on paper. And they love to sit there and say, oh, on paper, they only owned this book or that book. Baloney. That's no.
I hear you. These are the tales that I say they're full of shit about,
Yeah.
These are the cover stories. Again, we can point, as we've done here today, we've pointed to various various things and points of data that we can point to as fact and say, well, this this obviously is a point in fact that they're lying about, and you take the totality of all these points, it paints an entirely different picture.
Okay, this is hilarious. When I'm looking it up, just like on a quick lookup, It says the enchanted sex of Scotland's secret seduction. I don't know. I haven't deep dove the Scotochronicon yet. I will say this. That's interesting when I first put in it. Like, okay, that's the first thing that comes up. What the hell? So obviously, I mean, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, that book seems interesting. I have to do some more research on that. That's the first I've heard of that. I definitely appreciate you bringing that to my attention.
Of course.
That sounds fascinating.
I definitely think I need to go down that road next. But this was such, like you said, the clincher for me. This guy, his book is underrated. Of course it was, because back then he was before his time, right? Like and I'm going to try to talk to the guy. If I can get him to come on Occult Rejects, that would be so cool. But I don't know.
Awesome.
I don't know if he's like doing the things or what now. So if he hears this, and I'm going to try and find out how to reach him, and maybe he would talk to us, but he got real quiet after that. And it makes you wonder, did they get to him? Right? Did they? Because he brought, whenever you bring actual, like, here you go, here's the proof, here's the genealogical, blah, 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 all this stuff, which he did. That's a problem. That's a problem for them. So then people tend to disappear. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up. So back to, if I may circle us back here to Dr. Nathaniel Smith of Dartmouth fame.
Yes,
the man who demonstrably solved these mysteries of Joseph Smith's busted ass leg. And now they try to lie about who did that with Dr. Stone. And again, I think that speaks to the deeper relationships here and everything else. And so does this fact. And I want to know your opinion on specifically what you think is going on here. And there is absolutely zero record of the birth of Nathaniel Smith.
Wow. Are you serious? His posterity's all there. That's wild.
I'm saying if you go look at try to find the actual documents, right?
Yeah.
There's no documents. There's no documents of anything, right? When I say there's no documents of anything, if I try to find, for example, well, fast forward in American history and parapolitics, you look at the man who died in prison for the murder of Martin Luther King, James Earl Ray. I'm not going to say he did it. I believe he was probably involved in the situation in some respect, but what I'm saying is more to that story. But you can't. This man has no heritage. He has no. This man was born in the 1920s, I believe it was. He's got no birth.
That's weird. This guy. Okay.
There's three different parents listed. I can find three different sets of parents listed for him. There's no records though of anything. So I look at Nathaniel Smith. There's, in that respect, there's not even that, right? They're not even trying to fake a parents for this guy. There's just no one's really trying to even convince anybody of any parentage. Most specifically, there's no records.
Born in 62 to 1829. This is his time.
He's often described as being born, I believe, in Barnstable.
Oh.
Is that right?
Hold on. I'm not sure.
I'll tell you right now. The place where they claim
now his son, he has multiple sons named the same thing, and they were doctors.
But the place that they claim he was born is actually the place where he was married.
Oh,
I'm not saying he wasn't born there, but I'm saying the only record I can find is he was married there.
So weird. Yeah, no, I haven't gone down that rabbit hole
Bristol.
yet.
He's alleged to be born in Bristol, but Swansea, Bristol, Massachusetts. But that's where he was married in 1791 to Elizabeth Chase, as you described. And there is a record of that. That record does exist.
But where did he come from, right? Where did he come from?
So it's described that he's from there, right? It's described he's from there, right? But there's no record of that.
Hidden.
So, conflated with these files is a Nathan Smith out of New Hampshire, right?
Connecticut colony, the son of Richard Smith and Annie Hurd Smith is what I found.
There's no record of that, but if you could send that to me, I'll track down.
It's not a record, but yeah.
No, but I can determine how that got conflated. Is what I'm saying.
Sure.
They try to claim Nathan Smith comes from New Hampshire in one conflated mystery here, but it's not the same. It's not the same dates.
Not the same.
I'm saying this is within kind of the collective file of Nathan Smith that's available online through Ancestry and whatnot, and that's a different Nathan Smith.
Oh man. Yeah. And all the sons are like, they all name their kids Nathan Smith, and then they are all doctors. So it gets really stupid again, just like the Samuel thing. It's so hard because they all name their kids.
Why do you think all this would be deleted? Like I've even gone into the town records to see if there's an index of anything. There's not.
Because you know why? Because they're hiding his heritage. Yeah, they're gonna hide. I think
it seems pretty obvious at this point. And then you look at Zaciel Smith, and they do the same thing to his son. I'm sorry, to his brother, right?
Jesse, right? Is it Jesse or no? The other one. Let's see.
Joseph's grandfather would be the brother of.
Oh, Samuel. No.
I'm sorry. Would be the. Oh, wait, hold on. So yeah, Joseph's grandfather would be Azazel. Would be the father of Nathan Smith, right?
No. It's his cousin. It's his cousin.
Who's Joseph Senior or Azazel Smith?
So it said.
So Samuel Smith would be the father, right?
Azazel, he's cousins, some cousin somehow to Azazel, and cousins to Lucy through Lydia, cousins to both, and that's what they said on there, but not son. No. He'd
be the brother of Samuel then.
Let's see. Well, it depends on what cousin, right? If he was first, second, third.
Yeah, I suspect, looking at all the records that I've looked at, I suspect he was the brother of Azazel Smith.
Okay.
Joseph's grandfather.
Okay, if he's first cousin, yes.
No, but I'm just looking. I'm looking
you're
at the
finding it. Okay, you're finding it. Okay.
This is what I'm postulating based upon the availability of information with where these people were, the dates of things, other things going on, the proximity of locations of allegedly where this guy's born. Right.
Right.
I would estimate. Yeah. I would estimate he's Azazel's brother.
Okay, and he fought. It says he fought indigenous people on the colony's frontier.
That makes sense. So did Azazel, and so did their father.
So he decided to study medicine after watching an operation, but like it's a whole, but it doesn't really say much about his prior family, only about his children, right? Like forward. Mm-hmm.
So this is very important when we're considering the Massachusetts chapter of the society, because they have a very strange rule according to their website.
Well, he died in New Haven.
Well, yeah, but they would have been fighting out of the Massachusetts militia. That's who they were representing as far as.
But I mean, that's pretty funny. He must have really fit in.
That's where they all. I mean, that's where, like I said, Elias Buell fought for the Connecticut chapter, even though he's from Essex County, Massachusetts.
That's so wild. Yeah, he's up. You can tell he's even got old timey pictures that are pretty creepy, and I'll have to add some in, but they're pretty funny. He looks a little scary, to be quite frank. But
who's that?
Nathan. Did you see them?
I saw some of those pictures.
Old timey spooky picture.
So when you're considering, this membership, like I said, there's all these Azazel things that are
mm-hmm.
that are misconstrued. But he would actually be out of the New Hampshire chapter. He would have qualified for New Hampshire chapter. Now, he's not on the original New Hampshire chapter list, but again, New Hampshire has a different rule saying something later. But let me go back to Captain Samuel Smith, the alleged father of what I allege is the father of Dr. Nathaniel Smith and the father of Azazel Smith. So this is Joseph Smith's great-grandfather through Azazel, right? So he is confirmed to be a captain fighting these Indians as you just described. And if you look at the rules of the Massachusetts chapter of the society, for some reason, their rules are you had to be an officer for 3 years in service before June of 1775. Which is weird because that's the official start of the Lexington and Concord events.
Oh, wow.
So why is it service before then?
Yeah.
That's their rules. That's what I'm reading it word for word off of their website right here. So if you think about that then provides context of why I found the Sons of American Revolution accepting membership for Captain Samuel Smith.
Wow.
And his descendants.
Well,
so that means Captain Samuel Smith qualified for the Massachusetts chapter based upon those wars you were just describing. And it makes sense that his sons would be doing the same things, right? As Azazel and Nathan, right?
Oh, for sure they were. No, for sure. And even if it's not his actual son, like if we find another parentage, it's still in the family. Like if it's his second or third cousin, it doesn't matter because they're going to be the same,
Yeah, I'd put money. There's no more distant relation between Azazel and Nathan than first cousin.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Well, they grew up in the same area. Right.
Yeah,
right. Same
exactly.
area.
I tracked the migration of these people. There's the other Smiths in the area. I went a little deep on this one just to try to find some of these answers.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, because they have all these questions about whether or not who is and who's not a member. And when I found that Captain Samuel membership, I'm like, well, this makes no sense.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm trying to solve the mystery of his son, Azazel Smith, and whether or not it's this captain or it's this private from New Hampshire.
It's
the New
got to
Hampshire
be
chapter.
the captain.
I can demonstrate it's the captain. I can
Yeah,
demonstrate.
because it keeps going back to that even online. If you go through Jesse Smith,
well, all I can demonstrate like this with Azazel. So he spells his name Asael. There's documents where he spells it that way. The private they're trying to conflate him with is Azazel Reed Smith. Azazel didn't have a middle name.
Oh,
Joseph doesn't have a middle name.
The kids changed, their stuff up often. Like Hyrum changed the spelling of his name when they moved. So, he could have thrown an H in there before, and then that works even better for the obfuscation, and then dropped it because Hyrum was originally HI, and then he changed it to HY because
it's certainly possible.
Yeah.
It's certainly possible,
to make it hard or whatever, who knows what,
But the thing I was just trying to point out there, Heidi, was that the captain spells it without the H.
Mm-hmm.
The private spells it with the H.
Right.
And we know, and I can point where Joseph's grandfather does not use the H, right?
And it's all
and the private has a middle name.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Joseph's grandfather did not have a middle name.
It's all over the internet now. If you look good enough, like where it will say this was his great grandpa, like where they're doing it in a good way. Like, and he was this great guy that did da 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 in the war and, whatever. And so
I don't know which records you saw, but the ones I saw, they're all describing, a lot of them are trying to describe him as this private.
Oh, wow. No, it went straight to it for me when I put in Captain Samuel Smith, and then I put in Joseph Smith, and it will come right up. Like I'll find.
I'm looking at the wiki tree and the Jenny.com websites. The title is Captain Smith, but someone has gone on to the biography and now described him as this private.
And
I'm telling you, that private is Azazel Reed Smith, and Azazel Smith, Joseph's grandfather, had no middle name and did not spell it with an H.
This is where I'm getting my information from for people so that they know. JosephSmithSenior.com is the website. And it talks all about Captain Samuel Smith Jr. Unfortunately.
I agree.
So
I agree with all those
there's
statements.
Another
what
one.
I'm saying is there's an effort to conflate this.
Yes, of course. Yeah. But this is just so people can look it up for themselves, because I know they're going to hit us with all this stuff from Wiki. But this talk specifically has like all the burial, death, gender, christening. It has everything you'd want to know about this Captain Samuel Smith being related to Joseph Smith.
Right.
So
that
they can go find it. I get what you're saying. They're trying to mix it up, and we know
with his son though, with Azazel, right? Not with Captain.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's probably some obfuscation with Samuel there as well. But what I'm saying is,
yes,
there's a campaign right now to convince folks Azazel Smith was a private,
right, a different guy. Yeah, but it shows his kids. Yeah, it shows all the kids and everything. Yeah.
Well, who's financing, coordinating, and executing these campaigns?
True. Well, we know who, because this stuff is out there. They have to come backward on something, because then if we start talking about this, they don't like it,
But what I was trying to get at is this is not a new thing.
No,
it's an old thing. It's not.
Yes.
It's not a one-off. This is actually likely commonplace, demonstrated not only through the Mormons, but your ancestor Talbot.
Yeah, it's constant with all of these bloodlines. They're hiding and then they'll, like you said, change a name, mix it up with some other farmer, something, and then it hides it. Yeah.
Can you explain the theory though on Mr. John Stuart Talbot? Because once you told me about that, and I dove into that one real deep, went on the same document journey, I concluded the same thing that I did here, is they're hiding that one. And John Stuart Talbot is definitely, in my opinion, the King George the second son, bastard child, right?
So, and I really think he is, only because of my genealogy takes me to these genealogies of these kings and queens. And when I say royal bloodline, I mean, they're kings and queens. I'm not trying to talk about the Mormon church here. I'm saying these kings and queens have this royal lineage popping up in all these Mormons, like genealogy like mine, and there's no messing that around. Like, it's DNA genealogy here. So
we were told that we left the royalties with the old world, right? That's what we were told, right?
Right.
Well, that's not the case, is it?
Well, they say that they hit this kid, right? And so it's quite the story. I mean, it's weird, but it's there. I mean,
what are your ins and outs and thoughts on the fact that John's like, what do you think happened there?
I mean, he ends up in South Africa for some rando reason. And then then his son ends up in Utah. And it's
Right.
just weird because they end up poor farmers and there's this royal lineage. And there were times where they tried to call him back because I guess they didn't have enough sons or something. And there's some documentation with this. And he said, nah, bro. And he died in Caseville, Utah. He never went back.
So that was the son of King George III with his essentially the quote unquote bastard child of King George III, right? Yeah,
Yes.
I believe it. So in hiding these, especially when you're talking about the British influence of, especially the Brigham Young era of Mormonism, I think this makes a lot of sense to me, right?
Yes, absolutely. And to your point on this, Grandpa, I just found this. I wanted to tell you.
Sure.
This guy is papered heavily. So when they tried to obfuscate this Captain Samuel Smith, it says he was the ringleader of the Tea Party, the committee. He was on the Committee of Safety. They have dates 1775 to 1785, representative to the General Court, 1764 to 1770, in 1772, 77, 78, 81. He was provincial Congress. Like, he's heavily documented. And on top of that, he was really good friends with Paul Revere, Sam Adams, and all these people. So I'm just like, look,
you're describing the confirmed members of the Society of the Cincinnati. You can go to the Massachusetts website and we can look on their Massachusetts chapter for Cincinnati.
Oh, he served directly under General Washington in 1773.
There you go.
What this is saying. So
I believe it. Again, so that's Samuel Smith, right?
Yes, Captain. Yeah, Captain.
So Captain Samuel Smith's first cousin, once removed. First cousin twice removed.
It gets so confusing.
Major Elias Buell.
Oh, wow.
So when you say he served under George Washington, Major Elias Buell was essentially the head of a security element there in New York City. So again, we're painting a picture of a very tight family, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. These are, I mean, and it says, it goes on to talk about the son that you're saying. Samuel Smith lived in Topsfield, Massachusetts. It talks about where he served and what he did, and his son, born a few months after giving birth to the son Azael, Asael. And this is straight josephsmithsenior.com.
Yep. And I can find that birth record.
Yep. And so there's no
with that spelling, with that same spelling too. Again, so
these are the guys. This is the guys. And
these things try to get obfuscated by doing these weird tricks, though, don't they?
Oh, well, they're constantly doing this, and they run the website. So, I mean, it's pretty, that's the same thing when they say Joseph Smith didn't have any other kids. I'm like, well, you run the website. So, I mean, that's pretty easy to change if he did. Like, come on. And they paid people off to never do a descendants. DNA. Yeah.
We see his, speaking to these, I apologize. Did I cut you off? We were saying there about the DNA?
Oh, I just said they paid quite a few of the supposed sons to never get their DNA tested. So,
I wouldn't be. Well, here's the deal.
Progeny.
I suspect that anyone who does DNA processing, it's only a limited number, regardless of what company you're hiring. It's a limited number of labs. It's only a hand, like 2 or 3. There's protocols, I assure you, within those labs to file things in a certain manner, especially when you're dealing with Mormon Joseph Smith descendants, because there's no way dude had, I think, recognized 26 or 27 wives and had no other children.
His polite, he had some pullout game, or something happened. I'm telling you, because every time you turn around, his wife is pregnant. Every time. So we know he's fertile. And people say, well, what about his typhoid? It could have made him infertile. Look, he had a shit ton of kids. Come on. A lot of them died, but they were there.
Oh, I have no doubt he has descendants today. When I did my DNA test, I discovered I was 4th cousins with Joseph Smith's 2nd great granddaughter.
See, and I want to tell. Oh, sorry.
Oh, Kimberly Jo Smith, and she had a different reaction than I did about life. She did a DNA test and found out she was Joseph Smith's 2nd great granddaughter. You know, she's from the Smith family. She's not Hyrum's daughter or granddaughter. I'll get back to you who she belongs to, but she's within the Joseph's brothers. I'm sorry,
family.
Joseph's son's descendants, right? I forget which son it was. I want to say it was Hyrum. Did he name one of his sons Hyrum, right?
Gosh, I can't remember. Oof.
Maybe it was Don. It wasn't Don Carlos. Anyway, so she's descended from one of Joseph's sons, but she didn't discover that until she did a DNA test. So what can I see there is the Smiths intermarried with Lawrence Washington's. George Washington's elder half brother and closest brother, relationship was.
Oh, wow.
The Smiths intermarried with them, but again, it's Society of Cincinnati families. You have the Smith Society of Cincinnati family, and Lawrence Washington was a colonel in the Virginia chapter of the Society of Cincinnati. He served under his brother.
And for anybody that wants to double check this, just for FYI, all of the stuff that I read you today about this guy on josephsmithsenior.com, this is where it comes from. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints International Genealogical Index. Again, another one with the microfilm, citing the actual microfilm number 458210, and another one, F848442. Like, this is reliable. This is like as reliable as you can get.
Sure.
And so if they want to obfuscate it any other way, they're lying to themselves. This comes from the church. That's weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, we've painted a lot of weird things of how they're trying to obfuscate a lot of stuff today, Heidi. So, so when you're describing Captain Samuel Smith's relations with Sam Adams and the upper echelon of society membership in Massachusetts, you're explaining him as serving under George Washington. Again, that may seem a little fanciful to describe these things, but again, this is the operations of these families within the Society of Cincinnati. Again, I just demonstrated how Joseph Smith's second great granddaughter is also descendant of Lawrence Washington, from the same intermarriage of the Smith and the Washingtons. There, I believe, was her great grandfolks. So these things go on. Why they go on, we could dispute that, I suppose, but. With the idea that you're also descended from Stephen Talbot, with having some of these same society lineage in your family, not to mention, not the least of which, John Lothrop there, as I was describing, as the descendant from everybody, including Smith and all these other characters. That's his ancestor, right? So,
including me and JJ are now family, just so you guys know.
Through Talbot, at least, at minimum. So at minimum. You're also a Bourbon of the French Bourbon House through John Stuart Talbot, right?
Yes. Yep. And it goes
the bastard child of King George III.
Yeah. And so if they say that's not true, no, it's for real. It is what it is. If they say that's not true, it literally shows it. And I sent this to JJ so he can see it himself. I sent my genealogy stuff and up through Stuart. If this is fake, how come it goes right up to the Medici line and Henry Bourbon, Marie Medici? Yeah.
I can assure you, I've done some research in there. It's not always the document you can find; it's the document you can't find, like Dr. Nathan Smith's parents, right?
Yes, again, and that's the Orleans family too. The Orleans family.
Well, these are all very important factors. I'm glad you said that. So, part of the Orleans and the Bourbon restoration of the French monarchy or government was a man by the name of Louis Philippe I.
Yes.
Louis Philippe I was the son of Louis Philippe II, the Duke of Orleans. They were this was the restoration of the Bourbon family and into the French running France
from Marie Antoinette.
These are your people. Yeah, from Marie Antoinette.
So it shows direct from Marie Antoinette to Franz Stefan von Reich to Princess Orleans to Philip, who you mentioned, to the next one.
Yep.
And
so you're related to this man.
Medici.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right.
Directly.
Right. You're descended from this man. I'm sorry. You're descended from this man.
Yes.
So this man, Louis Philippe I, the Orleans Bourbon restoration of France, the Bourbon family restoration in France as far as their government goes, because this is a society of the Cincinnati tale, and I would argue that this guy was the restoring what I would call the liberty factions of the society within there over there. So not to say Napoleon wasn't also involved in that. Napoleon was also on that side, I would argue, as well. So Napoleon Bonaparte was a member of the society. Louis Philippe was a member of the society. So Louis Philippe was hiding out. So he fought in the as a young man at the age of 19. He was assigned as a lieutenant colonel and member of the French chapter of the Society of the Cincinnati, because 13 chapters in the one for each colony and one in France. So he was fighting in 1791 to 1792, and then he actually left France before the fall of the Bastille Day and all that stuff there, and the execution of Marie Antoinette and King Louis, right? So again, he had to go in exile, right? Because his people, that's his grandfolks, right? They get murked, right?
Yep. They
do. Where does he go to hide? He goes to hide in a Society of Cincinnati town of his cousin, Marquis de Lafayette, the head of the French chapter. They're first cousins. So Marquis de Lafayette's assistant, with something called an aide de camp, his right hand man, if you will, was a fellow by the name of Major John Neville. Now, Major John Neville founded a town in Ohio.
That's a name of my family members. Just FYI.
Oh, really? That's a
direct.
They're a heavy society family.
Grandpa, direct.
Well, John Neville's
not great
John
grandpa.
Neville's father.
Yeah.
You're a Neville by your great grandfolks. Well, that's interesting.
My grandpa. So
because Colonel John Neville was the aide de camp to Washington
on the other side,
and Lafayette was Washington's protege. So Lafayette was half the age of Washington, but they were very close friends. So he was definitely, Lafayette looked up to Washington. So as a result of that, he hires Colonel John Neville's son. I think is it maybe William Neville, Major William Neville, maybe hires him as his aide de camp. Well, it's William Neville who sets up the town of Neville, Ohio, in Clermont County, which is a big society established area just outside of Cincinnati, and it's Neville, Ohio, where Louis Philippe was teaching while he was exiled from France for 27 years. He's living in Neville, Ohio, under an assumed identity, under a different name, as the town school teacher. So he's
so weird.
He's being protected by the society in a society town, in a society county right outside the society city of Cincinnati during this time. And then he becomes the future king of France. So imagine growing up as a hillbilly there in Clermont County in the 1820s. And you're like, and then suddenly you hear about this guy who's the king of France or whatever.
You got to come home.
Wait a second.
Yeah. you're needed, right? Like
that's what I'm saying. Did he know? I mean, I'm sure he knew because he went there when he was 19, but did he know that there was machinations to make him the king of France, or did he just get a phone call one day? Like, he knew who he was. Weird. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, did he know the bigger plan?
It's hard to say. That's on my grandpa's, like the one line that line I sent you through the maternal side, the people you're talking about through the Nevilles is on the paternal side of my mom. So
that makes sense. These families intermarry.
Yeah, it's so weird because
I'd be curious to know how closely related you are to the Neville boys, though, of the aide de camps there.
I'll look that up because I'll
send you their information.
Yes, that's a whole situation there because that's a direct. When you said that name, I was like, yeah, and Jackson so when we see is another one. Jackson,
like Andrew Jackson.
I gotta find out. I've never dove that deep down his line, but.
Andrew Jackson.
He's related to the Strangs. Yeah, I know I'm related to Andrew Jackson, but I'm related to all the presidents because they're all related. So,
well, I was going to say Andrew Jackson's mother is a member of Clan Vance. I'm sorry, his grandmother, his maternal grandmother is a Vance.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay, that's wild.
Yeah, he served in the Revolution the same way as my forefather Abner Vance did. They were both teenagers and served as a spy and a scout.
And this goes back to, and people may find this superfluous, but here's the thing. Look at me and JJ. We didn't know each other before Occult Rejects.
I didn't know you 6 months ago, Heidi.
Right. And here we are related, but not only related, right? He's got these hidden secrets in his side.
You ain't kidding.
So how many people are hidden throughout is what I'm saying. When they say America is the brave new world, I postulate they took some of the best bloodlines and hid them here on purpose, purposeful, whether they knew it or not. Okay. They did it. And this gets into cabbage babies and weird shit.
Well, I think we're describing that here with all these bloodlines, right? So as far as my hidden history in America, I would argue that my forefather, Abner Vance, I have argued this on my show numerous times and did a whole show demonstrating the circumstantial evidence supporting this. And I think this is why we see my distant cousin JD Vance as the vice president, because mine and his forefather Abner Vance was most probably the biological son of George and Martha Washington, hidden at a time in 1760, right, a year after George and Martha were married. Abner's born. He's hidden. He suddenly finds himself on paper being the son of George's childhood friend Matthew Vance, who marries Martha Washington's first cousin, Ann Jones. So these people definitely knew each other. He grew up with George, and his wife is Martha's first cousin. So what it seems to me is George is facing charges of treason in 1760, right when King George dies a weird death, and your ancestor, King George III, becomes in power, John Stuart Talbot's father, right? So,
Wow.
there's this epicenter of activity right around there where then suddenly it seems like Abner gets rushed off to Cherokee country over there in western North Carolina, where he would later marry into the Cherokee heritage situations over there within their governing and royal class, if you will. And it seems to me that that's what I heard there, because I do all my biological investigation of where the hell this guy came from on paper or through my DNA tests. And it's great that they claim that he's the son of Matthew and Ann Jones Vance, because DNA tests show that he's most closely related to the descendants of Matthew and Ann Jones Vance. I would argue, and I have argued, these folks are looking at it the wrong way. They're looking at it through Clan Vance, because that's what the man's papers say. They say he was a Vance, when in all actuality, the reason why he's most closely related to their descendants is because she's first cousins with Martha Washington.
Oh, wow.
And really, Abner's really a son of Martha and George. Again, on paper, his father grew up with George, and on paper, his mother was the first cousin of Martha Washington. And when I would agree DNA test biologically, that makes sense. It's just not, the connections aren't through Clan Vance. And I'm not related to any other Vance that's not an Abner Vance descendant, which is impossible because I have 4 Abners in me. So that makes every other person more related to me. It's like having a double first cousin. They're not all double first cousins, thank goodness. But
right. Well,
so there's a lot of these things. And again, what's the if I can offer any overall analysis of our discussion here, Heidi, what's the greatest common denominator here? Because Operation GCD is not just Operation Garbage Can, dude. I used to call my private detective agency that I ran for 4.5 years the GCD detective agency, because it's the greatest common denominator, right? That's how I look at crime. That's how I look at everything,
That's
right?
right.
What's the greatest common denominator here? It's the Society of the Cincinnati, from Samuel Smith in Massachusetts, right? Hanging out with the founding fathers and serving under Washington, to your ancestry here with King Louis Philippe, a member of the French chapter, who's secretly teaching under an assumed identity in a Society of the Cincinnati town in Ohio for Major John Neville was that guy's name. His dad's name something else. Major John Neville's town in Neville, Ohio. He's the school teacher while being run out of France because this whole French Revolution kind of backfired for the society over there, and Napoleon comes in, because when they execute Louis Philippe's, your ancestors, people, the Marie Antoinette and King Louis, when they get murked in I think 1794. They're the ones who sanctioned the society. Again, most of the society is a lot of royals from that area, right? So, including your ancestor, Louis Philippe I, the future king of France, who's hiding out by the society. So, when we're talking about people hiding by the society, whether it's Abner Vance under assumed identities, whether it's John Stuart Talbot, who has a lot of society connections, obviously, including King Louis Philippe, who was a member, right? So, or we're talking about the obfuscated history of Captain Samuel Smith or his son Azazel, the respective paternal grandfather and paternal great grandfather of Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon Church. I mean, the one commonality again is the royal bloodlines through the society, and them obfuscating and hiding all these people and details. That's the way I look at it.
It's hidden in plain sight, and like you said, I think they keep track of people. I
can show you that.
Yeah, because there are things.
There's a few things there's many things I doubt in this world. That's one of the things I don't doubt. They're tracking these things.
They know who has what percentage of what, and they keep track of that. And I hate to say that because it sounds very eugenically related, and it is. And that is, I postulate, it isn't the color of skin the reason why they try to get rid of people. It's the bloodline. It's just that they want their bloodlines to overpower the others, and that's it.
Well, that's correct. And if I may offer my insight on that subject. So, back to this Da Vinci narrative we were speaking about earlier, I think it's as basic as they're trying to keep it within their royal bloodline family, from what they presume, what they assert to be the royal descendants of the. And I don't want to offend too many people here. If anyone wants to. I don't try to comment on Christianity or folks in the historical aspects of it, but I went on a journey trying to determine why the Knights Templar thought they were descendants from quote unquote King Jesus and Queen Mary, and who those individuals were. So those individuals, from my investigation, were King Isbar from the Kingdom of Edessa. Now, this is Isis Isbar, their fellow, these different spellings, different names, or through various languages. He's mentioned in Josephus's War of the Jews. So This is where we get
Wow.
the recounts of the other Jesus. There's multiple Jesuses in there, and he's one of them. So
Right. Is that the
that
redheaded Jesus? Is that
I,
the redheaded
yes,
Jesus?
ma'am, I believe so. And
Because my grandma told me that story when I was a
Odessa
kid,
is the
Oh,
here
you're,
today, which is on my back.
yep, you're back.
The,
Okay, you're good.
so in relative to the Templars, they think they came from that guy. The first crusade, which lasted I think 22 years, was to the kingdom of Edessa and what is now modern day Saint
Ah,
Lothrop, Turkey. So
yeah.
what I think the Templars are doing when they're doing these is they're really just trying to keep it within the royal family. And again, that's why I say that we were taught that these royal ideas were left over in the old world and they didn't come to the new world. But I would disagree, and I would, I I've gotten flack for even just from folks of the interwebs for even making saying, well, they're like, well, aren't you one of these families? I'm like, well, that doesn't mean I subscribe to the principles of these families,
No,
despite being from these families. So I don't
we
agree
can't
with
help
bringing,
it.
yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
we
agree with bringing royalty into the new world. This was supposed to be a more of a different situation.
but we're showing again and again how it isn't. And that's the
Yeah,
point. The grand point is look what they did.
and I don't want to, yeah, and I don't want to make that sound like a derogatory statement because I think these families have done this to maintain these interrelationships within these families. And again, why my family tree looks like a Appalachian pole instead of a family tree, it doesn't have any
Hmm.
branches, is what I'm saying, is because they're doing these things still today, and they're doing these things to maintain what I presume they view as power, right? So,
Yes.
much
The
like I was
divine
saying,
right.
JD,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yep.
JD Vance is the vice president. How did he get there? Did he come out of nowhere because of his lineage? I would argue yes. So
Yeah.
the and again, people are tracking that, right? As you were saying. So how else does that happen unless you're tracking it? But they're doing this because they're fighting in opposition to something, right? I think that opposition, again, we can call it the Vatican. It obviously predates the Vatican with these families. This is a long-standing feuds, but nonetheless, they're maintaining these relationships to maintain power because it's viewed as
Yeah.
an opposition to an opposing force. What that
Well,
opposing
and
force is, again, you
yeah.
can call it the Templars versus the Vatican. It's manifested in various capacities over time.
And it can't just be thrown out like, oh, well, that was just old timey stuff. No, no. Look, this stuff goes on. Yes, there are many of us that escape it because, like, my grandpa that was super up there, he just became a farmer in a Mormon and just didn't want anything to do with it, And I think that happens more often than not. I think some
For
of them
sure.
get out and just don't want anything to do with it. And so, but that doesn't mean there's not a grand scheme of things. So,
For sure. And to that note,
mm,
like when I'm looking at parapolitics today, I often argue all roads lead back to the Society of Cincinnati here in America. And I'm often surprised even when I make that statement. And as preposterous as it sounds, let me share you one last story here with you and the
there you
folks of the
go.
interwebs here today. And that is I was doing a show recently with Ryder Lee, and Ryder and I really like Ryder's work. We get along very well in our conversations because we both have the same views on ancient alien cargo cults and the tomfoolery
Mhm.
of UFOs today. We both, he and I both have done a lot of research within the different, this variety of cults that fall under this umbrella. So I really enjoy conversations with that man. I learn something new every time, even on those subjects. But he's done a number of other things. He's got a couple documentaries out that I've done podcasts and discussed with him about that. Those are good documentaries. But he
Yeah.
recently did a whole bunch of research on Virginia Giuffre, the infamous Jeffrey Epstein victim, which I would argue and can produce a strong circumstantial argument, if not a strong argument generally, that she's a limited hangout victim in the first place. But I never consider always to look at people's genealogy, and I'm having a conversation with her. He's describing her family history, these instances of her death and everything else. How he believes she never left the Epstein network. I agree. Um, she was a victim her entire life. She was born into it. He and I both kind of came to those terms. But in that conversation, he just slides past her mother's maiden name, and I was like, did you just say Cabell?" He says that her mother's maiden name's Cabell.
Oh.
I'm like, "Did you just say Cabell?" And now, every Kill Bill sirens went off in my brain hole because that's one of the founding families of Virginia and very prominent throughout parapolitics.
Mm.
For example, the fellow that JFK, we've done a lot of JFK discussions, the
Yes.
assassination of JFK, the CIA director he fires, General Charles Cabell, Air Force General Charles Cabell, same
Oh.
Cabell family. The mayor in Dallas on 11/22/63, Earl Cabell, brother of Charles,
Oh.
right?
Huh.
So Robert Mueller, right, the former FBI director, The guy and U.S. attorney who let off Isaac Asimov Jr. from having the largest child porn stash in American history says, "You know what? You don't need to go to jail, bud." That Robert Mueller, his wife is a Cabell. She's
Wow.
second cousins with these guys. And speaking of the Bay of Pigs situation with JFK firing, General Cabell,
Oh
the
yeah.
operations officer in charge of the Bay of Pigs for the CIA was a guy by the name of Dick Bissell, Richard Bissell. That was Robert Mueller's first cousin once removed, first cousin of his mother.
Oh wow.
So we see these parapolitical network stuff, but when he said, so that's why when he said Cabell, I was like, wait a second. Also a society family, right?
Boy.
So Virginia Giuffre's uncle is a member of the Society of Cincinnati.
Hmm.
Her
It doesn't
mom's
surprise
brother.
me. It doesn't surprise me nowadays, So and it's sad that there is some of us that make it out and we just live like regular lives, but there are some that are captured in, like you're stating in it, and their lives are, I would rather be in the worst predicament ever in normal life than go through some of the stuff they go through, because it's
And
sad.
I
Yeah.
totally agree with you. And I just want to be clear. I think this is a great example of what we've been discussing in that regard. And I just want to be clear. I don't have his membership card. However, if I look at the paternal lineage of Virginia Giuffre's mother, right? So this would be her, again, that I can see that her third great grandfather was a colonel in the Virginia chapter of the
Oh,
Society of Cincinnati, a famous colonel who became governor of Virginia, a famous governor of Virginia. So I can look at his paternal lineage and I can determine it's either her brother or her great uncle. So it's a very close
right.
relation, right?
Jeez. And it's a big it's a big club, obviously.
Literally.
And they have their own faction wars like we will never understand.
Yes.
So
And they don't want us to understand. We're
no,
the
no.
profane. You
Yes,
know what
we
I
are
mean?
the
It's none of
profane.
our
Yes, I
business
do.
what their business is. It's none of our I've gone through these things in my life. It's none of their business what their business
Right,
is, right?
exactly. Right. Yeah. But we have to put it out there. And the reason why it's important is because it matters in every aspect of all of these people, especially people in charge and families that continue to be in
I,
charge over and over and over and over. So,
I I appreciate all these conversations we have
yes.
in our friendship here in sharing these stories here, Heidi, on and offline here. But when you say you just hit another, it's almost like you read my mind when we have these conversations, because when you just said they have their own factions, you know, I would argue that's why JD Vance is vice president. Not to besmirch my kinfolk. Again, I don't know the man,
Right.
um,
Right.
but we do share some DNA and obviously names and similar names in that. Although I'm JJ Vance, not the vice president. Right, I'm there, right there, and so I assert there's this cult of George, as I call it, right, and within the Society of Cincinnati. So these are the folks that wanted George Washington to be king and never leave
Mhm.
office in 1798, right? They wanted him to be king in 1783 in September when they formed America after the Treaty of Paris. Mind you, the Society of Cincinnati formed on May 13th, Friday the 13th, May 1783. A very Templar-like date, if you will, by Templar descendants. So they predate America, right? So then when I say these people
Yes.
run America, they predate America. These are the people that founded America, but they've been here longer, right? So
Oh, yeah. And they're constantly intermingling with royalty of native
there you go.
bloodlines, which is
and
very
and
strange.
and European bloodlines. The current king of Sweden is a member of the Society of the Cincinnati, hereditary.
Yep.
So
And
this is
and so it's
not
no
just the French
surprise.
bloodlines, right? It's not the
Yeah.
French royals. It's Prussian royals. It's Polish royals. It's Swedish
Armenia.
royals.
Armenia comes up a lot and it's weird
Well,
and I
I
don't
don't
know
want to get into
why.
that right
But
now. You know what I mean? But
I know that's a whole disaster. I'm just
the
saying
well,
that
to the
comes
point.
up with Professor Johnny. Clear back.
Well, there's
So,
and the Crusades.
yeah,
That's I mean, there's again that
for sure.
you can't talk about that region of the world and not talk about the Knights Templar. So
Yep,
um,
exactly.
the I and I will geek out on the Templar all day. But you read my mind again and hit on a point about these factions. So you see this cult of George, I would claim, that wanted him to be king, and then in turn want his descendants to be king, right?
Right.
So, and
Right.
I would assert that's what we're seeing here go on. So, no one knew about this, and I had a little bit of visibility, not through any other means other than my, being a Cincinnati native and having some contacts to realize that suddenly outside my distant cousin's house on July 12th was the Secret Service, right?
Oh.
So this is 2 days prior to the Butler PA attempt on Trump's life. No one knew for 2 more days after that JD Vance was selected as the vice president. But what I'm arguing is, if this cult of George does exist, which George Washington did not ask for a giant dick statue in Washington, D.C., known as the Washington Monument. That was not in his last will and testament. George Washington did not ask to be made a god inside the halls of Congress in the apotheosis of man. That was not in his last will and testament. These are what I would argue is elements of the cult of George.
Yes.
And these are the people that would argue be instituting these things, such as the political power and machinations behind these, what I'm describing. So if that bullet, which I do argue was an actual attempt, I don't argue it was the same guy. I actually argue there was, you know how the Bay of Pigs was the machinations of the military forces, the tip of the spear of what we had for the military was going to be turned against Cuba and then was turned against Kennedy, right? I argue the same thing here with Trump. So I argue that there was some AI droned, they call it a drone AI battlefield system kind of. You put up a drone, you have a bunch of sensors and everything else, and sensor operated guns, meaning that drone will laser a target on the ground, and then that sensor operated gun will then fire on that target, right? So I argue that's what happened here, and that's why the shot was precise, but not precise enough, because if you were I'm an Army trained sniper. I'm a graduate of the U.S. Army School of Snipers. The Air Force thought so highly of my shooting abilities. They said, you know what, boy, you're going to Army Sniper School. I also went to Army SWAT School. So cool. I'm just saying, I as a trained sniper, even moderately trained sniper like this kid allegedly was, like, you're going to adjust for shit. And he's not going to take that many shots and not hit and get almost precise. So I would argue that's the result of a machine that was not operating properly and wasn't adjusting properly, right? So with this drone targeting system, despite being real-time targeting, you're going to have errors like that. Anyway, that would be the tip of the spear of what we have right now in technology to use overseas in battlefields. So it would be the same concept turned against them. But had that succeeded, I think the cult of George would have won because no one knew it yet, but JD Vance was the vice president select. So if Trump died that day in Butler, PA, well, then who would be the president on the ticket? It would be JD Vance.
Right. And I think they needed
who would be the VP?
More...
Peter Thiel?
Well, and they needed to
that'd be the Nelson Rockefeller move to do, right?
I think they needed it more secure. I think that's why possibly, that might have been left because it wasn't done yet. Like it would have been incomplete. And I think there would have been arguments there. Whereas now it would be.
Well, I don't think they get along. You never see those two together. First of all, they've taken very few professional, diplomatic, or any trips otherwise. I think I think that's a thing, So I think Trump's well aware of these things. That's not what just because he selected him as his VP doesn't mean anything.
Well,
he may be doing that. Keep your enemies closer.
Selected one of his worst enemies as a VP, so that's a joke. Yeah.
Well, Trump adheres to the art of war, so this would comply with his philosophies on life. So, in doing such, keep your enemies closer type of deal. So, what I'm saying is, you don't even have to believe my stories of where I got that information. But I remember texting my dude Recluse, the host of The Farm, because we did a show about. I knew we were going to be doing a show on something there soon. We ended up changing it and ended up doing a show about the assassination. But we were, I was texting him like, "Oh man, dude, there's this dude was selected before the shooting as the VP." He would then later go on the Joe Rogan Experience to tell the story of how 2 days before the shooting he was selected as the VP. They were going to announce it at Butler PA, but he claims on Joe Rogan, JD Vance does, that they decided not to do that. So it's an interesting narrative you start painting in a picture if you consider that he's representing the cult of George, and had that shot been successful, that we would have had the cult. They would have been instituting George Washington's descendant as the quote unquote,
and then he would be the mark. Yeah, then he would be the mark. That would be a bad day for him. Probably.
He's got a real puppet vibe to him, doesn't he?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That would be interesting to say the least. Oh. But yes, people that think that free religion and all this stuff is what America's founded on. Listen, this is one nation under Freemasonry, and apparently one nation under the Society of Cincinnati.
But that's freedom of religion. It just has that asterisk with a disclaimer, right?
They couldn't not say no to them, right? Yeah,
right.
They had
well, that's
say
what I'm
everybody.
saying.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to do goddess worshiping, occultism, ceremonial magic, sex rituals, then you can't put that on paper. I want freedom of religion. That's my religion. Right? You see what I'm saying?
Because they were being. I don't think very many people liked it for sure. So they had to say something. Yeah.
I'm pro liberty, and I got my ass in a lot of trouble telling a lot of ranking officers, this is in the military, my military career, look, buddy, this is America, and this is how we act here in America. So I've always been pro liberty in that respect, but I also recognize it becomes a weird discussion for a lot of people when you want to discuss what is liberty. And now I don't condone a lot of the activities within these occult systems, but at the end of the day, like, I mean, that they couldn't put that. We're going to do weird occult shit. No, we need freedom of religion. So it's you know, it is. There's a degree of not being honest about it, obviously, but you know.
Well, I think as long as you're not hurting
liberty.
children, dogs, like
There
any
you go.
animals, whatever. Like, I don't really care if it's all voluntary.
Well,
if it's voluntary, not forced.
Well, that's a good point, though. That's a great point you bring up, because that's a very important characteristic to consider, because it's not all the people that practice these systems engage in the extreme versions of it where they're violating such you know things as animals.
Yeah,
or
some people are like, hey, if you want to be my dog, I got a collar. I don't have a problem with that. If you're over 18, whatever. If you know, weird.
But look at it like this, though, Heidi. Look at it like Mormonism. You have so many different flavors of Mormonism. You have 192 different denominations recognized of Christianity, right? And there's various extremes of these philosophies, a core group of philosophies, right? Within Mormonism, we see it very extreme with folks like you're familiar with the Jeff's cult, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So I look at the occultism just like that, right? Is that you have the extremist versions of it, and you have the, you know, again, people who are maybe not doing anything that's violating other animals, people, or nature. That, for all as I'm concerned, I'm fine with their liberties being practiced if they're not doing those things.
Yeah.
It's the extreme versions of these practices. That's personally, I mean, people.
The forceful version. It's the forceful version. If they're if they're extreme, if everybody's extreme on the same page, like, not my problem. You know what I mean? I don't care. Like,
I know I've taken criticism. I'm not trying to be an apologist for occult belief systems. What I am saying is I think there are occult belief systems that are legitimately fall within that liberty category that aren't infringing on other people's liberties and rights.
Right. And that's the point. Like, these people that want to go live out in communes by choice, that can leave at any time, that, you know, say it's fine. Like, yes, there's mind control options, but let's be real here. I mean, they have their own choices. Everything's a little bit of mind control. So is college. So, like, you're going to pick your poison one way or another. And I'm with you. Like, I always say, if Mormonism would be more truthful, I would have a lot less problem with them. That people constantly are saying, why do you have to come after them? Why do you have to talk about them? Why do you because they lie. That's all. I hate lying.
Yeah. And and to that note, I have friends that are Wiccans, right? Like my roommate from the Air Force Police Academy, who I was stationed with our first assignment, I remain friends with still today. He's been a Wiccan. In fact, when we were in the police academy, they said, what do we do with these two? They said, no one wants to room with them. They said, put the Mormon kid in with the witch and call it a day.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
I overheard that conversation from my instructor. So we've been me and the witch have been friends ever since. But and he's still practicing Wiccan today. Him and his wife are, and I have no problem with that, even though I recognize that. And I don't think he's never been in any creepy stuff. He's not infringing on other people's practices and liberties and rights and whatnot. But I also recognize that Gerald Gardner, the form of Wicca that they practice, comes from Thelema, and there are extremist versions of this Wiccan.
Right.
So I think it's a sliding scale, and again, it's more to me less about the theology or philosophies that people are doing, and just more about the actions. So like, it's easy to point out, like, but it's also easy to get that lost in saying like all these people are doing that too. But it's not like. It's obviously not the case.
No, definitely not.
But it is these families, though, that comprise these organizations. I think you can agree that across the spectrum,
top
Freemasonry,
elites, elites are running that. Yeah, for sure. They do what they want. Mm-hmm.
Well, but time after time, though, we see all these Mormonism, Jehovah's Witnesses, right? Because they're founded by the same folks that find Skull and Bones, and the Skull and Bones were founded in part by the Russell family, that is, and the Samuel Huntington Russell, right? He was a Huntington. Yeah. Related to folks like your family, you'd be kinfolk to this individual. So same with myself. They're Martha Huntington.
Yep.
So
and we can't
these families that do these things,
it is
right?
What it is. It is what it is. We just can expose it. Like, if we didn't do that, I feel like if we know and have the information and we didn't expose it, that's the problem. That's why people get mad at us, but that's fine. They can be mad. It's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And I like to look at what I do as an accurate portrayal of American history, especially occultism with America. I honestly don't get much into the actual rituals and belief systems. I've done enough of that within Mormonism. They got me a number of times with one of these over the years, right? From when I was a baby sprinkling water to when I was 18 getting ordained into that priesthood, right? So,
Right. Yeah. That's
and the
enough of
various
that.
priesthoods in between. So, I don't really get into that. They're what I like to call their voodoo. I mean, people take offense to that. I call everybody voodoo. So it's not just voodoo is voodoo. It's everybody. That's their voodoo.
Oh, that's
Everyone's
funny.
got their own
Right.
voodoo.
Right.
But the one thing that I try to focus on is just the connecting principles of how these are the same families throughout the American history, and all of those families go around the folks that started this place, and that argument goes way back to the old world. So
That's right. Well, with that, we'll leave it there. And you guys got to do your history lessons. This was one for today. It's a lot more than you might think. It isn't just like, oh, we just ran away and started some stuff at Plymouth Rock. That's a cute story. Cute story though.
The Disney version.
Yeah, but people were here long before that. We've talked about that a million times. And I think, as long as it gets out there, you guys can do what you want with it. But I think it's a good conversation so that people can understand what America really is. And so with that, JJ, I appreciate you so much coming on. Will you let people know one more time where to find you?
Yes, ma'am, Heidi. I appreciate the time and conversation. I mean, as much as I think I know about a lot of these subjects, I always leave these conversations with you with a list. I have 8 tabs here of a list of other things I got to read about here. And again, looking at your family tree you sent me, I got to understand more of these relations within the society network there that your family tree obviously dictates and can exhibit to me. So, not the least of which your relations to King Louis Philippe, the guy that head out in my old residence of Claremont County, Claremont County, Ohio. When I was thinking of Claremont County, there's a town called California right along the lines from Neville there. So it's another one of these mound towns that exists there in Claremont County, which Neville, Ohio is built around a mound, right? The centerpiece of that town is a mound, of course, because it's founded by the society, right? So,
of course,
but I learned a lot of these new things and I got a lot of notes, but folks at the interwebs, appreciate your time, Heidi. I hope folks at the interwebs enjoyed the conversation. Operation GCD, host of Operation GCD, and JJ Vance, not the vice president. Nope, there we go, somewhere. Boom. I do Operation GCD live on Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern times. Operation GCD and Occult Rejects Fridays, where we just do a conspiracy theory, kind of conspiracy culture roundtable discussion with the topics of whoever our guest is. We try to focus on whatever their research and topics are. Other podcast guests or authors or blog authors, etc. And then I do Operation GCD Sundays, my new show, which is kind of me telling my tales of high weirdness and true crime that I've encountered throughout my life.
Pretty good ones. Yeah.
Well, this week, I assure you, to demonstrate kind of these satanic, what folks call satanic murders, because people don't really believe in Satan, but what's often described, it's more thelemic murders, I would assert. But there was a fellow that I encountered in Great Falls, Montana back in 2001. I'll be telling a story about this week. I think he represents a very Son of Sam Minot style situation that popped off in Great Falls, Montana that no one really talks about. So, and that he was a kid-diddling, cannibalistic, psychopathic serial killer that I came face to face with in 2001, and may or may not have eaten human meat burgers that he served up at the local Hardee's in 2000. So those are the kind of tales I discussed there.
That's disturbing, but sounds fascinating. I would still want to know.
well, and on that note, on the satanic murder situation, these ideas, I'm sure a lot of people probably just who heard me say satanic murders were like, oh, satanic panic. I'm sure there's a certain contingent of folks that's their immediate reaction, and fair enough, they bought into the magic show. I don't fault folks for that, but Operation GCD Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern times will be starting next Thursday, the 19th, the 18th or the 19th, is the anatomy of satanic panic. The 19th.
Ooh,
and that's going to be focused around folks like, I'm going to be demonstrating how the propaganda campaign started, how it ended, and how it continues. I'm sorry, how it still continues, it didn't end, and how a lot of folks have the ideas misconstrued that there was the satanic panic was all panic and they're satanic. And I'm trying to demonstrate to folks otherwise. So I'm going over the history of the campaign of propaganda and then chronologically going over murders that were happening contemporary to these pieces of propaganda. So that'll be an interesting series. Those are my Patreon Sundays and Thursdays. But thanks for the time, Heidi, and I appreciate all the conversation.
Of course, and thanks again. Till the next one.